Good afternoon. I would like to call a public hearing to order. Proposed local law number B of 2022, allowing the county to continue holding virtual public meetings. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf? Jan Lynch?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Great. So I'm Jan Lynch, and I'm a longtime resident of Tompkins County. I'm also the executive director of the Finger Lakes Independence Center that serves people with all types of disabilities. And I'm on the Community Services Board, have been on it for years, and I'm currently on the Mental Health Subcommittee, although I've also served on the Developmental Disabilities Subcommittee. And so tonight I'm here to talk about the law to have virtual members of a board or committee not be counted as part of a quorum. And I feel that's not in keeping with best practices to include individuals with disabilities. As executive director of FLIC, I encourage you to consider that the local and state laws governing in-person meetings mean that inclusion of people with disabilities is not a priority. I participate in 4 state boards, 4 local boards, and numerous committees. And the general consensus in the disability community is that being forced to go virtual during the pandemic was actually a good thing because it allowed more people with disabilities to participate in local and state meetings and have their voice be heard. So I ask that you make revisions that are supportive of inclusivity and accessibility by amending the law to include virtual participation to have the same validity as in-person participation. And this is not only for the disability community, but for people who may have acquired disabilities through aging, that also makes it difficult for them to perhaps attend meetings. So it's mobility disabilities. There's really a variety of reasons why virtual has turned out to be kind of a gift to people with significant disabilities. So I understand this can't be changed immediately, but it would be great if you all decided to be a leader in accessibility for all members of our community by exploring how you might be able to change that law. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jan. Is there anyone else here to speak on proposed law number B of 2022, allowing the county to continue holding virtual public meetings? I see no one else. I would like to close the public hearing. I would like to call to order the public hearing for proposed local law number C of 2022, a local law overriding our tax levy limit for 2023. Would anyone like to speak on behalf of this proposed local law? Deborah Dawson?
Yeah, may I speak?
Sure.
I just want to clarify for the benefit of my colleagues and people who are watching what this law actually means. This does not necessarily mean that we would be increasing the tax rate, for example. What this means is that the overall levy, which is the tax base multiplied by the tax rate, may increase beyond what the state cap is if it becomes necessary for us to do that. We almost never do that, but we routinely pass this law so that if there are exigent circumstances that require us to take that step, we are able to do so. So thanks for letting me explain.
Thank you, Deb. So I would ask, I know that I allowed Deb, but typically we have the conversation for legislators whenever we bring it to the floor, and Deb Dawson will be bringing that resolution to the floor. And so I am happy to open up for debate and other comment if we can do that. Is that all right, Randy? Okay. Okay. Any other comment for this proposed local law number C? a local law overriding tax levy limit for 2023. I see none. I would like to close the public hearing. Welcome this afternoon. It is Tuesday, June 7th at 5:35, and I would like to welcome everyone to the Tompkins County Legislature. If you could please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call of members.
Veronica Pillar. Here. Lee Shirtliff.
Here.
Mike Sigler.
Here.
Travis Brooks.
Here.
Randy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion. Here. Deborah Dawson.
Here.
Henry Granison.
Present.
Rich John.
Here.
Dan Klein.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Here.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi.
Here.
Shauna Black.
Here.
14 members present.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, I would actually like to do some reordering of our agenda. I would like to recognize Mike Lane, who is our TC3 liaison, and he would like to welcome a very important and special guest today.
Well, we actually have two important and special guests today. I want to initially introduce an old friend of Tompkins County Legislature, Ray Slaughter, who is the president of the Tompkins County Board of Trustees at the present time, and has been for, what, 3 years?
Unfortunately, it's close to 5.
Oh, goodness. And Ray has brought with him someone very special, our new TC3 president. Ray, would you be kind enough to introduce Dr. Kremenek?
I would do so, Michael. Thank you very much. But before I do that, I want to thank Dan Klein for letting me sit in his seat. I've always wanted to be on this legislature, and this is about as close as I'm going to get. So, Dan, thank you. And I think the 5th president of Tompkins Cortland Community College, Dr. Amy Kremenek, who is to my left, will give the same thanks to Travis Brooks. Though my guess is she probably has no aspiration for sitting in the legislature. She will be coming to you often, and more often than not with ideas floating and, of course, hand outstretched. But I do wish to introduce the 5th president of Tompkins Cortland Community College, Dr. Amy Kremenek. She comes to us from Onondaga Community College. After a national search. It was a very vigorous search. It was expedited because of the way things are in SUNY these days, but appropriately so, and remarkably fruitful for Cortland County, Tompkins County, and this community at large. Tompkins Cortland Community College has a remarkable ability to attract super students, super staff, some of whom are sitting at this table and who have taught, both adjunct and staff otherwise, and now super presidents. And we are so pleased that we were able to convince Dr. Kremenek to leave Onondaga, which is a much larger institution, and to come to Tompkins Cortland Community, where we know that she will stand tall, stand long, and stand with wonderful success, in part because of not only who she is, but who we all are. So thank you, Dr. Kremenek.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. I'd like to thank Chairman Slaughter for his kind introduction, and also to Legislator Lane for his invitation to be here. It's a real honor to meet all of you. As I said to several of you, I am actually on day 5 of my position. I started on June 1st, and I think this is my first official, I suppose, outing as president of TC3. And when I was considering this opportunity, and what a phenomenal opportunity it is to serve you, to serve your counties, to serve your students and your constituents as president, there was just absolutely no question in my mind. As Chairman Schlatter was saying, I worked at Onondaga Community College. I was there for 18 years. And so I've been your neighbor for a long time, and I have long admired the work of this institution. And it's really my honor to be able to lead it, to have this opportunity, work in conjunction with the faculty and the staff, of course, the board, and all of you in service to our students. There are so many opportunities to really build on the rich tradition of excellence at the college. I have, as I said, for 18 years have been a witness to that, but really all of it has been completely confirmed over the past 5 days for me in working with faculty and with staff, and just the warm welcome that I've received from so many people in this community and also from the college. So I thank you very much for the opportunity. We will be back, as I believe you are aware, we will be back with our operating budget. I'll be accompanied by our Chief Financial Officer, Bill Talbot, where we'll be talking with you more about the college's plans for the future and how we can work together with you in service to students in our 2 counties. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kremenek. Mike, would you like to say a few words as well?
I don't know how to follow that. I think that's a pretty nice initial talk from our president about how important the community is. We all know it's been a difficult time the past couple of years for TC3, and we're going to continue to work with the college and administration and the board out there to make sure that it continues to be a first-class institution.
Thank you, Mike. Next, we are going to move on to our proclamations for the evening. Our first proclamation is LGBTQ+ Pride Month in Tompkins County. Whereas Tompkins County has been a leader in supporting and fighting for the human rights, dignity, and respect for all people, and whereas the June 1969 riots at the Stonewall Inn in New York City precipitated the modern fight for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, and asexual rights, and whereas Gay Pride Day was first celebrated on June 28, 1970, and has evolved into Pride Month as an opportunity for remembrance and celebration of the history of the movement. And whereas in 1978, the most recognized symbol of gay pride made its debut at a gay pride event in San Francisco, the rainbow flag. The flag with its 8 colors, sexuality symbolized by hot pink, life by red, healing by orange, the sun by yellow, nature by green, art by blue, harmony by indigo, and spirit by violet, was designed by San Francisco artist Gilbert Baker and has been adopted worldwide. And whereas after being unofficially recognized for years, Pride Month was recognized on a federal level by President Bill Clinton in 1999, and his recognition has continued by U.S. presidents, including President Biden. And whereas Tompkins County was one of the first counties in the state of New York to pass a local law number 6, 1991, amended to its entirety in 2004 as a local law number 1, 2004, commonly known as Local Law C, to protect against discrimination based on gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. And whereas in passing this law, Tompkins County reaffirmed its commitment and responsibility to act to ensure that all of its residents are afforded equal opportunity to enjoy a full and productive life, and ensures that the rights of all residents to make their own choices, follow their own beliefs, and conduct their lives as they see fit are protected. And whereas another more local landmark incident, the Ithaca 50 2004 lawsuit, in which 25 same-sex couples who were denied marriage licenses sued the state of New York, claiming that the marriage prohibition was unconstitutional unconstitutional, further highlighted Ithaca and Tompkins County's commitment to LGBTQ plus rights, in this case supporting marriage equality. And whereas a multitude of Black LGBTQ plus Americans, such as Audre Lorde, James Baldwin, Alfonso David, and Chicago's first Black female openly LGBTQ plus mayor, Lori Lightfoot, have helped pave the way for a more just and equitable future for us all. And whereas in June 2020, the Supreme Court ruled that LGBTQ workers are protected under Title VII, which prevents discrimination based on sex and cannot be fired for their sexual orientation or gender identity. And whereas more LGBTQ plus residents of Tompkins County are living openly and thriving more than ever before. And whereas downtown Ithaca will celebrate its inaugural Pride Week, June 26th through July 3rd, with educational opportunities, health screenings, vendors, dance parties, drag shows, LGBTQIA plus history walking tour, and a performance by the Ithaca Gay Men's Chorus. And whereas members of the LGBTQ plus community now serve in the highest positions of leadership in nearly every level of office, including here in Tompkins County. And whereas Harvey Milk, a prominent leader and political figure in the LGBTQ plus movement, said, "It takes no money to respect the individual. It takes no political deal to give people freedom. It takes no survey to remove repression." Now, therefore, I, Shauna Black, Chairwoman of the Tompkins County Legislature, do hereby call upon all members of our community to join me in celebrating the contributions of our LGBTQ plus residents and renew our commitment and actions to eliminate prejudice everywhere it exists, and do hereby proclaim June 2022 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in Tompkins County. And I would like to introduce Luca Moore and Danny Palmer, who are here to accept this proclamation. And let's see here. I think I saw Luca earlier.
He's up on the right.
Hi, Luca. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you. And I'm not sure, is Danny in the room?
We do not see him. Would you like to say a few words?
Of course. Thank you. So first, thank you, Chairwoman Black, and thank you to all the members today. I'm Luca Maurer. I wear many hats. Many of you probably know me in my professional role as the director of the Ithaca College LGBTQ Center and the interim executive director of student equity and belonging there. I've also been a resident of Tompkins County for more than 20 years. And in fact, I moved here to Tompkins County because I knew of the LGBTQ supportive and respectful policies and laws that this area had in place long before many other areas of the country. I'm very appreciative that you've taken this time to designate a proclamation for Pride Month 2022. I dropped into the chat a link to the website that details all of the 2022 Ithaca Pride events and some of the sessions and presentations that Chairwoman Black referred to. I invite everybody to avail themselves of all of those events will have to offer. And of course, I wouldn't be me, Luca Maurer, if I didn't remind you that you can learn more about the Ithaca 50 case and 32 other LGBTQ historic firsts that happened right here in Tompkins County by participating in one of the events during the 2 weeks of our Pride celebration that will be a guided tour, guided by yours truly, me, of a sampling of some of Ithaca and Tompkins County's LGBTQ local history. And so again, I'm honored and very grateful to be able to represent the many and very diverse folks that make up our very substantial LGBTQ population in Tompkins County. And I wish you all a very happy Pride. Thank you very much.
Luca, I just want to thank you and Maureen for your absolute commitment to our community. I have known Luca and Maureen for, gosh, probably, well, let's just say a few decades. And you are constantly at the forefront of the fight, whether it be at the marches, the Ithaca 50, Planned Parenthood, the work that you have done for our community. I can't even begin to stress how important it's been. So thank you for your commitment and for your diligence and your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have a proclamation recognizing and celebrating Juneteenth week. Whereas slavery came to North America in 1619 with the delivery of the first enslaved Africans to a colony in Virginia. And although President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation went into effect on January 1st, 1863, more than 2 years passed before news of the liberation of slaves came to Texas, and African Americans across the state were made aware of their right to freedom on June 19th, 1865, the day that is officially recognized as the Juneteenth holiday. And whereas Juneteenth, as this day came to be known, commemorates the hardships and losses suffered by African Americans in their struggle to attain freedom from slavery, to recognize and pay tribute to the memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice in this quest, and herald their experiences of those and others who were successful in achieving victory. And whereas the Tompkins County's history counts among its numerous sons who enlisted to fight in the Civil War, 26 African-American residents who signed up between December 1863 to February 1864 at St. James AME Zion Church, Ithaca's oldest church structure and among the nation's first AME Zion churches. And whereas the civil rights movement of the 1960s, better described as a multiplicity of movements, addressed the racial segregation, discrimination, and acts of violence committed against Blacks in the United States, and ultimately sought to secure legal recognition and federal protection of the rights of citizenship for African Americans as guaranteed by the Constitution. And whereas African Americans have changed the face of education in the United States by protecting access and opportunity, insisting on the inclusion of all histories, and guaranteeing the rights to education for all youth. And whereas Juneteenth reminds us that decades of collective action have demonstrated measurable progress, albeit slowly, frustratingly, and gradually, while persistent inequity and injustice for African Americans continue in education, employment, socioeconomic mobility, healthcare access, and public safety on our nation's journey toward a more perfect union. And whereas the observance of Juneteenth honors the history, perseverance, and achievements of African Americans and celebrates America's progress and continuing commitment to realizing the principles of liberty and equality upon which our nation was founded. And whereas Juneteenth is recognized as a holiday in 49 out of 50 states and the District of Columbia, with the state of New York striving to set an example for the rest of the nation, and officially became a federal holiday June 17th, 2021. And whereas the Tompkins County Legislature adopted Juneteenth as a paid holiday for all employees on April 19th, 2022, to be observed on Monday, June 20th, 2022 throughout the county. Whereas this year, Tompkins County and City of Ithaca leaders have come together to develop a week of programs, June 13th through the 19th, on behalf of their workforces to tell the story of Juneteenth by recognizing the past and honoring our future through presentations, Black-owned business exploration, and a historical tour. Therefore, I, Shauna Black, Chair of the Tompkins County Legislature, do hereby proclaim that the Tompkins County Legislature honors and celebrates the rich history of African Americans who fought, died, strived, and thrived in the pursuit of freedom, and designate the week of June 13th through the 19th, 2022 to celebrate Juneteenth. And we have Reverend Ken Clark from our Office of Human Rights that is here to accept the proclamation and say a few words.
Thank you and good evening. And on behalf of the collaboration between the city and the county to plan and to commemorate Juneteenth, and in honor of the historic and current struggles for the full human and civil rights of African Americans, which has been so central to the American story. I accept this proclamation. I'm grateful to colleagues from the city and county who have helped us over the last 2 years to plan a schedule of events to commemorate this event, this holiday, Juneteenth, which provides such a prism into the larger American story. And to be able to do that with such collaboration and cooperation by two governmental entities and with wonderful colleagues, and do that on behalf of and with city and county staff and for the larger community. I'm grateful for this collaboration and for this recognition that is reflected in this resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Ken Clark. Next in our agenda, we are going to move on to just to announce actually that we will not have an executive session this evening. And we're going to move on to the privilege of the floor for the public. I have one blue card here, and I just want to read the rules for speaking under privilege of the floor. I agree to a 3-minute time limit. I agree not to raise my voice. I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. I agree that if I cause a disruption and am asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. First up is Zachary Nguyen.
Thank you very much. My name is Zachary Nguyen, and the People for the American Way set up a booth across the park here during the Ithaca Festival under the name of a group called Ithacans for Reimagining Public Safety. They are one and the same. And People for the American Way's lobbying in favor of reimagining public safety is the subject of an ethics inquiry that convened here this morning. And I am curious why Ithaca's former mayor, who is now executive director of People for the American Way, is continuing to engage in a lobbying campaign when it is that exact behavior that is the subject of the ethics probe. I would like to have an explanation for why, well, we're not supposed to ask about county employees. I'm just going to skip that there. Let's see. I would suggest a complete halt to the county reimagining public safety effort until the conclusion of the ethics probe. I also asked the legislature to request former Mayor Merrick cease his lobbying efforts through People for the American Way until the ethics probe concludes. I also suggest that the role of Chief Equity and Diversity Officer be eliminated as an office within the Tompkins County government, and any funds intended for that role could be better spent elsewhere. I am also curious if the legislature is aware of the looming global famine and mass starvation event relating to the grain and fertilizer shortages stemming from the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And I suggest action be taken now to mitigate this inevitable oncoming crisis. Thank you very much, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you, Zachary. And do we have anyone else that has submitted for comment? We have no more comment from the public. Thank you. For municipal officials, I do see George McGonigal from the city of Ithaca. Hi, George.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see y'all. We're very busy at Common Council these days. I'll give you a recap of the things we worked on last week at our meeting. I'll start with good news. Sales tax in the city is up 23% over 2021. That's good. The process of building a new fire station on East Hill took a big step last week when we authorized the transfer of property and the assignment of an option to the IURA. The plan is to build a new firehouse at what is now 403 Elmwood and 408 Dryden Road, and to sell the property that's the current East Hill Firehouse at 309 College Ave for a large amount of money. The redistricting report recommendations were approved by Common Council. So those will be in effect next time. In terms of police reimagining, we've gotten started. Actually, the police department's gotten started by developing a plan to work with an outfit called Lexipol, which does policy services, training, options, data collection. We approved the contract for Lexipol. Also, thanks largely to Rob Cantelmo, one of my colleagues, we discovered a grant option from federal funds coming from the U.S. Department of Justice Community-Oriented Policing Services, a grant program which would pay for recruitment and training for crisis intervention teams. And this may be $350,000 with no local contribution. So we're real happy about that. We're continuing to work on an encampment policy for the city. Nels Bohm put together a really comprehensive overview of where we are now and possible options of where to go forward. Obviously, we'll be working with the county in cooperation to help alleviate this or lessen this problem. And we continue to work on reimagining public safety. We've got quite a ways to go before we decide on exactly what we're going to do with this first recommendation. That's a city-only recommendation. And finally, I'll say that Southside Community Center is going to have extensive celebrations of Juneteenth, and I hope you all can attend. That's it.
Great. Thank you, George. Are there any questions for George today? Veronica Pillar and then Mike Sigler.
Thanks, George. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little more on the city's plans for the for recommendation 1. I think I heard through the grapevine you had a committee of the whole yesterday talking about this. So what can we expect going forward regarding, like, will there be referendums about anything, a commissioner of public safety and so on?
Yeah, that's as yet to be determined. And whether or not it will happen this year or next year is also yet to be determined. I will say that creating a redesigned department is more complicated than you may have heard from Mr. Nguyen's friends at People for the American Way. There is a serious campaign to approve a referendum to vote on whether or not there's a commissioner of community safety. The civil service complications, the union complications, the city charter issues have yet to be worked out. So we're not there yet, as best I can tell you. But we are committed, everybody on Common Council is committed to creating a better community safety department.
Thanks so much. And I know we all here are also eager to work with you on any of the other, hopefully slightly less complicated recommendations.
As are we. Yes, and that, I should remind everybody that that first recommendation is only one of 19.
Great. Thanks, George. Mike Sigler?
George, I didn't know if I heard you about did you say anything about the dredging when that's where we are with it?
Yes, you asked me that question last time. And I talked to, thank you for reminding me. I talked to Mike Thorne and I thought I said that they'd start this year. And that's not going to happen. And it all depends on the New York State DEC, and we're ready. We've got the site for the dredging spoils all set, but we have to get the go ahead from the state. So best case scenario, next year.
Yep, thanks.
Any other questions for George or comments? Henry Grandison.
Yes. Thank you, George, for your work on the Tides program. Can you give us an update? I know it's not a city matter necessarily, but can you give us an update of what's going on with that?
Well, we have meetings every week. We don't have approval yet from the city or an agreement with the county about how responsibilities would be shared. There's actually a long way to go. I've discovered that there are more hiccups than I was aware of. And but we're trying to focus on keeping it a low barrier option and deciding where would be the best place for it. I think we have widespread support among the advocates that a more centralized location for homeless encampments would allow them to serve homeless people better. I think we're rooting for the area behind the county transfer station and Burger King and what's the last big box store? Walmart, thank you. That's what we're hoping for. But the Department of Public Works also has plans for that area. So we'll have to see how it goes. We're working hard and we're making slow progress.
Okay. I know that we also received a letter from a constituent from Amanda Champion's district about the town of Ithaca. Have you really thought about also the town of Ithaca in terms of their issues?
Yes. At this point, and some people may disagree with me, but at this point, I think too many cooks can maybe slow things down more than they should. But we're definitely going to bring the town in because this area is pretty much adjacent to the town, right across the inlet. And there are homeless encampments on the other side of the inlet.
Okay. Thanks again. Thanks for working on it.
Yep. It's my ward.
I know.
These people are my constituents.
But still, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mike Sigler and then Greg Mezzi.
I just had a question, George. I keep hearing that word low barrier. What does that mean?
That means you don't have to be sober, basically. There are going to be some rules. No violence. We're going to make a real push to make this a tidy encampment with no widespread pollution and But low barrier, to my mind, means you don't have to be sober. And you don't necessarily have to, you can be somebody that is not eligible for social services. Like, for example, sex offenders who can't access a homeless shelter at present. That's what it means.
Okay.
Greg Mezzi.
Hi, George. Thanks for coming. Always appreciate the updates from the city. It sounds like there's a lot going on.
There is.
Wanted to ask you about the fire station on Dryden. So that's pretty much from a done deal. That's where it will go. Is that the understanding, or is there still more to be done there?
I think that's where it's going to go.
Okay. Has there been or any public comment or public feedback on that location?
Of course.
Okay.
People are worried about truck traffic. I think the representatives, both from the county and from the city, have had meetings with the residents in that area and have listened. And I think most of the concerns are minor. And remembering that fire trucks go up and down Dryden Road all the time now. And the fact is that on College Ave, it's so densely populated and trafficked that it's difficult now to get a fire truck out and gone from that location. So hopefully it'll be a big improvement. And there will be some public access as well to the firehouse.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would suggest is I would encourage you at the city to look hard at your zoning and that area and what you're asking others to do as they look to redevelop that area, as you start to redevelop that area yourself, because it's a big monstrosity, right, in the middle of a very residential area. So I just think it's important.
You're saying the firehouse is a big monstrosity?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at.
I disagree.
If you look at the zoning in that area based on building length and other things in the surrounding parcels.
I would disagree with you.
Okay, we can take that conversation offline, but I mean, I know for a fact that there's building length limitations and things like that. Maybe not where that specifically is, but across the street and other places. I think it's important to have more of a, practice what you preach rather than do as I say, not as I do sort of mentality. So I think it's really important to critically look at that area as any municipality develops a parcel to try to respect what's being asked of others in that process as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for George? Okay, I see none. Thank you, George, for joining us this evening.
Thanks very much.
It's good to see you. Okay, I am going to do some rearranging before we go to legislator privilege of the floor, and would like to move up the consent agenda so that we can vote on that and have some of our staff leave if they do not want to enjoy the rest of our meeting. Let's see here.
Shauna?
Yes.
Prior to you putting that on the floor, we have Michael Stitley, who had some information for one of the legislators who had a question. If
Okay.
Perhaps he could just come up and answer it.
Yeah, sure. Well, that is on consent agenda. Do we just want to pull that off of consent agenda? Mike, was that all right? And then we'll do it shortly after.
Okay.
During report. I'm trying to think the best way.
We're going to wait a minute, Mike.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. Okay, we'll continue with consent agenda. I think is the best way, and we might have to wait for Michael's response, and then we will do that resolution during the public safety report. The consent agenda, resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing or special committees. Advisory Board appointment, ID 10949, from the Government Operations Committee, Library Board of Trustees, Marley Stoller, at-large member. Term expires December 31st, 2024. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Resolution A, authorizing award of bid and anticipated receipt and acceptance of Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and New York State Department of Transportation grant for rehabilitation of taxiway lighting construction, Ithaca Tompkins International Airport, ID 10919. Resolution B, authorizing award of bid and anticipated receipt and acceptance of Federal Aviation Administration and New York State Department of Transportation grant for installation of new primary wind cone construction, Ithaca Tompkins International Airport, ID 10925. Government Operations Committee, Resolution C, establishing standard work days for elected and appointed officials of Tompkins County, ID 10950. Resolution D, resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 0321, telework arrangements, and Policy 0322, flexible work schedules, ID 10947. Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee, Resolution E, Tompkins County Legislature.
Please.
Okay. Public Safety Committee, Resolution F, calling on the New York State Legislature to pass specialized secure juvenile detention reform, ID 10951.
Off, please.
Resolution G, authorization to enter into an agreement with Broome County to share Tompkins County's microwave system bandwidth, Department of Emergency Response, ID 10939.
Off, please.
Okay. And if I can have a mover for the consent agenda, moved by Veronica Pillar, seconded by Ann Corman. And we are going to do a roll call.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Granison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes,
14 ayes, 0 nos.
thank you. Okay, why don't we go ahead and do the three resolutions that we pulled off so that we can have staff leave if they would like to. Let's move first to Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee. And that is Chair Ann Corman. If we could go through the resolution and then we will plan on doing reports afterwards.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And so the resolution, this is on packet page 43, resolution number E. Tompkins County Legislature declares support for the New York State Draft Climate Action Council Scoping Plan. And also in subsequent pages, we have, for your reference, the comments from our planning department to the New York State's plan. And those are included because we referenced them and they were also called out as that we support their comments.
Annie, would you like to move that?
Yes.
Okay, can I have a second, please? Seconded by Greg Mezzi. And conversation. Questions, comments? Mike Sigler?
Hi, yes, I know Randy was going to say something too. He'll be nicer about it than I am. So, no, I pulled it off. I wrote a long article about this back in December, actually, when they first released it. I submitted that to the state during the comment period. So I don't know what they do with those comments, if they actually incorporate them or don't, or what they do. I've been in sales for about 20 years now. And it always annoys me when managers set unrealistic goals. The problem with setting unrealistic goals is the manager says it's aspirational, and the person that actually has to do it says it's an unrealistic goal, and I'm not going to do it because it's unrealistic and we're not going to make it. And I'm just going to end up struggling and not making the goal. So it's actually no goal at all. And that's the biggest problem I have with this document. And that plus the fact that it's over 300 pages. I can't imagine someone sitting down on a nice January evening in front of the fire and paging through this so that they know what the state has in mind. And the people that are going to bear the brunt of this are not the people living in New York City or living in the suburbs. Ithaca, it'll be the people in the countryside with the farming. And there is not much in the document. I did read the 350 pages. There's not much about the protection of active farmland in the document. And I'm not talking prime farmland, as they like to say, or, they like to say it's all going to go on rocky soils and not good farmland. And that's certainly not going to be the case in Lansing. It's all going in active farmland. The one array was just approved by NYSERDA. That one will stretch from Van Ostrin Road, 3,000 acres into Groton. I don't know what they're going to do with the other one yet, if they're going to approve that or not. And I know that the power plant is talking about 1,000 acre power array as well. So that's another big problem with this climate outline. I don't know what you would call it. I mean, they call it a plan. I think a plan actually has to address the actual issue. And all it talks about for pages upon pages is how we're going to electrify everything. And it doesn't really go into how we're actually going to get the power to energize all these things. It's great to say we're going to have a battery, but, and it's great to say we're going to have solar. I think solar is fine, but in February, your draw on the solar is about 0. And then people say, well, we'll have battery storage. Well, again, you need something to charge the battery. That's not an actual answer. And when it comes to nuclear in the plan, it doesn't actually, it says we don't want to go with new nuclear. So again, you've set yourself up for failure. And I don't know why we would endorse a plan like that. I would like to see a plan with some solutions and actual realistic solutions and solutions that you would put forward to people and say, this is what's going to have to be done. If you think this is the existential threat that now experts had said, 12 years, that was 4 years ago. So now we're down to 8 years. If it's the existential threat that they say, and you're not talking nuclear, then I don't really feel that you're serious about the issue. So that's my 2 cents. Again, I wrote a long article back in December about this. So it's not like this is new to me. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Randy, Ann Corman, and then Greg Mezzi.
Thank you. First, I'd like to comment that I feel the planning department did a very good job of responding to the 350-page document, and I agree with everything they wrote. I thought they did a good job with that. But I also have done a lot of research on solar. I've always been fascinated by it technically, and I've been to a lot of government websites, including the U.S. government, and they're struggling to find the materials to build these things. Silicone's the #1 way it's produced right now, and they're struggling with that material. And the technology is just not there yet for thin cell to produce all this electricity they think they're going to produce. I think it's a risk for us militarily. China's building nuclear plants left and right, and we're building none. I think it's a big mistake. Even the person who founded Greenpeace said that nuclear is the answer. He's done all the research and he believes that. So by saying you're not going to look at that, it's a big mistake. So I like solar. Well, my wife and I are going to put some solar panels up ourselves, so we endorse that. But I just think it's a real risk to think that these things are just going to happen, because they're not. So.
Thank you, Randy. Ann Corman.
Thank you. I wanted just to see if it was okay. We have staff here from our planning department, Terry Carroll and Megan McDonald. I wanted just to see if they wanted to add any comments. I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to, but they're here and they were instrumental in writing these comments.
Yeah, thanks. And I think we're just here to answer any questions regarding our comments if anyone has them, or to help out in any way we can.
Okay. Thank you. I know that it is a lengthy report, and I know that you and several others in your department spent time going through this, as I've talked to a lot of people in the community who have spent time going through it. And, it is really ambitious, and I really think we need to do something really ambitious because we have a short amount of time to address this crisis that we have. So I am the resolution, if you go through it, it's compared to the actual plan. We're just trying to, the resolution that was submitted for today is really just trying to be supportive. They've gotten a lot of negative comments and a lot of pushback, primarily through millions of dollars spent through the fossil fuel industry. So we're trying to just, for this resolution, the purpose is just to say, hey, we support your plans. We didn't go into detail, but the overall gist of going towards that, talking with some of the folks on the committee for this at New York State, they've been bombarded. So this is just to say, keep going. You're headed in the right direction. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. It needs a lot of work. It's a huge, ambitious plan. But I'm really supportive of New York State taking this on.
Thank you, Ann. Greg Mezzi and then Rich John.
Yeah, I just, I'm sure we could have lengthy debate about each topic or each paragraph in a 300-page report, as I'm sure we would have 14 different opinions on the first sentence. But I want to say that I really appreciated our staff for taking the time and the diligence in the way they distilled a pretty exhaustive document to really boil it down. I was a Cliff Notes kid in college and, most of my young adult academic life. So I really appreciated the thought that went into this because I really do think you got a great understanding. And so I think when our staff does great work, we need to commend our staff. And that was one of the reasons why in committee encouraged that we include their comments in our resolution, because I think it's important that we show support for the work that our staff are doing every day. And I think you guys did a great job. Megan, Terry, Katie, all of those that were a part of this. If I'm leaving a few out, I apologize. But know that your work is not unnoticed and appreciate all the efforts on this, because to Ann's point, we do need to do something. And I think as we communicate our thoughts as a county, this is a great way to do it. So appreciate all of your efforts.
Thank you, Greg. Rich John.
Thank you. Terry or Megan, just if you're able to summarize, what do the 350 pages say about nuclear power?
It doesn't go a ton into nuclear power. It's hard. I think it's really trying to fashion some of just general outlines. It's interesting. It goes pretty into detail in some pieces and not into others. I think, like the legislature, the Climate Action Council has, I think 14 or more individuals that all have their own opinions, and they had to come to some level of agreement in order to get a scoping plan out. So I think, topics like nuclear energy tend to be a little bit more divisive. So I think they tried to skirt that a little bit. And so I think they're leaving the door open. They certainly didn't close it, but they also don't go into any sort of exhaustive, illustration of what that might look like. They just kind of set out different scenarios, and nuclear is, sometimes a greater part of it and sometimes a lesser part of it, depending on the scenario that you look at.
Thank you.
Mike Lane and then Deb Dawson.
I also want to thank our planning department for all the work here. It's excellent. I've got a comment on nuclear. I know there are people out there who are saying that's our only savior for electrification. I hope it's not true. I'm very thankful that we don't have a nuclear power plant at Cayuga Station on Cayuga Lake. That was going to be built quite a few years ago. And anybody who's watched what's happened in the Ukraine, maybe we've forgotten about Chernobyl, but the soldiers found out about it again, and the hazards of what happens to property that has been, and acreage that has been polluted by a nuclear disaster. And even more so, when there were soldiers firing at active nuclear power plants in the Ukraine. And well, you can say, well, that's just war. Well, if it can be done in war, it can be done by terrorists, both domestic and foreign, on our own soil. I don't think we should head down the road of nuclear again.
Thank you, Mike. Deb Dawson and then Mike Sigler.
Yeah, I think we're getting really off track with this debate on the merits of nuclear. As I understand what we're commenting on, and Terry and Megan can correct me if I'm wrong, but the scoping plan is something that the Climate Action Council put together to address the goals and mechanisms that were placed in the CLCPA. And my reading of the CLCPA is that it was really emphasizing electrification and wind. It didn't say much of anything about nuclear. And so the scoping plan really responds to what's in the CLCPA. So we are being asked to state our support and our critique and the substantive comments that our very capable staff has about the scoping plan. And I think this debate about whether we should go with nuclear or electricity or wind, whatever, really is more properly addressed to our state legislature and is not within the purview of what we're discussing tonight.
Thank you, Deb. And just a reminder too, this is not us voting for Tompkins County taking these actions. This is a resolution that is showing support for a bill that is happening on the state level. So I just want to remind.
It's not even a bill. It's
a thought.
It's the implementation plan that the CLCPA requires the Climate Action Council to put forward.
Thanks, Deb. Okay, Mike Sigler, if you could wrap us up, please.
Sure, because I want to disagree with all three of you.
There you go.
I'll take Shauna's thing first. No, granted, this is at the state level, but no, this attaches to you personally. This is a vote that you are taking on something, and it will follow you. I mean, it may not follow you badly. You may be able to hold it up later and say, hey, look what we did, because I just ran for Congress, as you know. That happened many times. And there were other things that people said and said, look what this guy voted for. He's a jerk. So, no, if you guys want to vote on state issues, then that's what you're voting on. You're acting like a state person, so do that. As for, we're talking about the CLCPA and electrification. You can't talk about electrification without how you make the electricity. You can't say we're going to electrify all houses for heating and not say where the electricity is going to come from. It's like me talking about a refrigerator, but not talking about food. I mean, the two go together. They are linked. And to not say, well, where are we going to get this power from? Right now, we're using more natural gas in this state than we did 10 years ago. Why? Because we're taking nuclear power plants offline and we're not replacing them with green energy. We're replacing them with natural gas produced in Pennsylvania. So no, the two are linked. You read the report, it talks a lot about electric cars and it talks a lot about heat pumps and all of that's wonderful, but the power has to come from someplace. And if you don't want it to come from nuclear, I mean, I have some other ideas. We can be splitting hydrogen out of seawater and we can do a hydrogen-based economy, but you have to talk about how we generate the electricity. And as for Mike's commentary about nuclear energy, I'm sorry, Mike, your information is just dated. I mean, you're talking about something 50 years ago. You don't even need water anymore to cool a nuclear power plant. France has been doing this for the last 40 years. Our control systems are better now than they were back in 1972 when you had the meltdown at 3 Mile Island. I mean, we were able to put guys on the moon with like
okay, guys,
nothing.
We are getting off track.
With
just
nothing.
Finish it up there,
But
Mike.
the control systems are certainly different today than they were 50 years ago. So yeah, nuclear power has come a long way, frankly, from what we've been talking about. And Chernobyl was a dated Russian plant that they didn't take care of. I mean, I don't know. It's apples to oranges. So.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote on this resolution.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
No.
Mike Sigler,
No.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
No.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes,
We have 11 ayes, 3 noes.
thank you very much. Next, we are going to move on to our public safety resolutions that were pulled off of consent. Rich John is Chair of Public Safety. Rich, would you like to bring these forward?
Yes, I just want to do this in the right order. Let's see. I would move Resolution F, Doc ID 10951, calling on the New York State Legislature to pass specialized secure juvenile detention reform.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Veronica Pillar.
And I can speak to the motion. This resolution is urging passage of Senate Bill S 9116 that would give some alternatives to holding juveniles in the event there isn't an available specialized secure detention bed available to place them in. And this has been a recurrent problem ever since passage of Raise the Age in New York State. They determined that 16 and 17-year-olds should not be held in jails with adults, which makes great good sense. At the same time, there has never been the adequate funding to develop these specialized secure detention facilities and make them available on an open basis to all of the counties in New York State. We're very fortunate. We very, very rarely have to hold a juvenile, but when we've needed to do it, we have not had access to one of these beds at one of these locations. And when we do, they're sometimes hundreds of miles away. What this bill would do would allow us to hold them, frankly, at our jail, so long as they were separated by sound and sight from any adult population of the jail, which I think is a reasonable proposal for when there isn't a bed available otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Questions and comments? Mike Sigler.
I just asked for a pulled, Rich, just because it's a bigger move and we're weighing in on state issues. And I was going to ask, I know I saw Sheriff Derek Osborne. I mean, he runs the jail, so I was kind of hoping he would give his take on it. So.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Rich, for bringing this up. Yeah, as we reported in the not so distant past, we did have quite a run of issues with juveniles that spent a lot of time at the sheriff's office. In fact, we've had a couple that I can recall that spent multiple days here. And I don't mind saying that the conditions that we had to put them through to hold them were probably worse than if they were actually in our jail. And that's a pretty low bar. So yeah, it has been an issue. We haven't had a lot of it going on as of late, but we happen to be dealing with an incident now that will require such placement. And if you give me a couple hours, I could probably let you know how it's going to go. But it's been about an hour so far, and we're still waiting. So it definitely is an issue. Whether or not it'll be long-term with the state is to be seen. So yeah, it would be very nice if we had the capability to hold them locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any questions for Rich or Derek or Sheriff Osborne?
I just know Daniel Cornell, our probation director, is with us as well, and he brought this to our attention. I don't know if he wants to say anything on this issue.
I can be real brief. I concur with what both you and the sheriff said. I also think there's some benefits to the juveniles who are being held because they're not being held hundreds of miles away. So they would continue to have access to their families, their law guardians. And I think that's an important factor, as well as cost considerations and just the safety of the juveniles. We would have control over it rather than having them hundreds of miles away at a facility that we don't really know much about.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Any other questions for either Dan, Sheriff Osborne, or Rich John? Ann Corman?
If this, thank you, Madam Chair. If this were to pass, say, today, what would it take to, would you see modifications that we would want to make, or you would want to make at the jail to do this on a regular basis? Or, I mean, I know it doesn't happen often, but would there be some modifications?
Possibly, but possibly not as well. As most of you know, our jail population has decreased significantly. Lately, we've been hovering right around the mid-30s for head count. So there definitely is room currently where we could house juveniles. The issue we may run into, especially as of late, we're still dealing with some COVID issues from time to time. It'll go away for a while, then it pops up and we have to separate people in the jail, which has been really good with the low jail numbers. It gives us the benefit of doing that. But there could be a conflict with juveniles and people infected with COVID. So yeah, it would all depend on the situation and how many people we would have to hold and how many have COVID. But for the most part, I think we could make it work without much of an investment.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any other questions before we vote? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Ziegler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
and 14 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you. And there's one more resolution that was pulled off of consent.
Yes, I would move Resolution G, Doc ID 10939, authorization to enter into an agreement with Broome County to share Tompkins County's microwave system bandwidth, Department of Emergency Response. And we have Michael Stitley with us, and I'd ask if he's willing to come forward so he can answer a couple questions.
Can I? Oh, where'd you go? Or sit at the table,
Yeah,
Michael.
come in and
Yeah.
sit,
Make yourself comfortable. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Lee Shirtliff. And welcome, Michael. Would you like to talk a little bit to this resolution?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak tonight. So we were approached by Broome County last November about providing a pathway between them and Onondaga County. They have entered into a mutual aid or shared service agreement where they're going to be utilizing their 911 system to really build out their system. So what we're asking for this evening is to really provide a pathway, a hop, if you will, between the two systems. So if their system were to ever fail, they'll have some redundancy. Their primary pathway will be fiber optics, so it won't really have a day-to-day impact on our system. It will simply be used in the event of some type of a failure in their system so they can continue to operate. Many of the counties around us have entered into a similar agreement with Onondaga. I think that this is a really good opportunity for us because what this will allow us to have is the same connectivity between Onondaga and Broome in the event our vision ever turns to maybe using some form of a shared service with either one of those counties as well. With our recent upgrade to our 911 system as part of our backup center project, we made some recent upgrades to our system over the last couple months, and we've moved to a new technology so that our microwave towers can talk to one another. And with that initiative, we even have more bandwidth that we had prior to that initiative. In a way, it was explained to me by our staff that really have this background in this technology. We're only currently using about 20% of our system as it stands right now. So I don't see this as really having any negative impact on the system as it stands today. So.
Great. Thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions for Michael Stitley? Mike Lane?
Hi, Mike, thanks for coming. I would just don't totally understand what we're doing here. When we're talking about the microwave bandwidth, are we talking about our frequencies?
You know, I don't know if I could really answer it. Frankly, I'm just not an expert in that area. I'd probably have to go back and get some clarification, but I don't think it's actually our frequency. It's just the technology we use on our system. Now, our frequencies do go through this system, but it's not, as I understand it, it's not like the frequencies that our emergency services use to operate their radios, for example. It's just the technology that's available on the tower that allows the systems to talk to one another.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is going back to when we put in the radio capital project, that was one of the things we had that reserved those frequencies. And I can't remember the 800 or 900. Lee knows.
It's 800.
The 800s.
Yes.
Okay. And we were the first out of the chute on using those frequencies. A lot of the other places weren't using them. But just so I have it in my head, so they're going to go through our towers on the microwave to go from Broome to Onondaga or Onondaga to Broome. If we have an emergency situation, a fire, a big fire, a flood, hurricane, something like that, knocks out this connection that Onondaga and Broome have already, are we going to be okay if they have to all of a sudden use our frequency all the time?
Yes, because as I stated, we're only currently operating at 20% of the system capacity as it is. And with the upgrade that we did, it changed the technology a bit. We're using the technology we were using before was like a T1 technology. And again, I'm repeating some of the information I've received from our specialists, frankly. But we're now using an IP-based technology. And one of the things that's a little bit more unique now, and we actually just experienced this over the weekend. I'll share a little story. There was a planned power outage at Ithaca College, and we weren't aware of it. So when they shut the tower down, our generator kicked on and we had generator failure. And when that happened, we essentially lost that tower for a very short period of time. But really, we saw no real impact. I mean, there was some minor impact, but not what we thought we would have. So that was encouraging. And that's a result of some of the upgrades that we did most recently to our system. So if we have a scenario like you've explained, I think it's really important to just to reiterate that this is really just to provide them some redundancy. They're still going to be using their fiber as the primary. And what I'm told is just because of the capacity that we do have, that we really wouldn't see any impact whatsoever in our system.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Lee Shirtliff.
Just to put Mike's mind at ease, two sets of frequencies. The frequencies that we use on the radios in the county between the vehicles and the portable handhelds are the 800 megahertz. And no, those are not being used outside of the county borders except through some cross connections periodically. The microwaves are linked together through 6 gigahertz and 11 gigahertz radio frequencies. And it's just a path like following a telephone line through the air. And as Michael stated, way beyond the capacity that we ever use in the county. We just past history, the counties around us have all built microwave systems. And using grant money several years ago, we did create links and potential links so that everybody could be backed up with different routing if they had something go down. And within our county, you do have multiple paths so that if any one tower goes down, you've got a way back to our main core and to other counties. So there's redundancy built throughout. And the interoperable communications grants that Michael and his staff have been able to add since I was there are really geared toward building this cross-county capacity to back each other up. So I'm really glad to see this coming forward. Mike, we've talked with Broome County for years, and they were a long time getting on board, and they're a big part of the regional approach.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that additional insight too. Thank you.
Deborah Dawson.
Yeah, I had a quick question, not so much for you, Mike, but maybe for Rich. Do we get any shared services credit for doing this?
I don't know. But that's certainly New York State is always asking us to do more. And you don't get credit for what you've already accomplished. This might be one where we could.
Well, this is a new one, so
Right,
let's
right.
take
No, that's
advantage
a good
of
point.
it.
Yeah. I think it's worth putting on our list.
And
if we
Michael's
pass the
writing it
resolution.
down even as we speak.
Yeah, I'm writing it down. I'll follow up with Amy.
The question would be when we would plan to implement it and the savings we could document by implementing it, or the savings that any of the municipalities could document.
Just as a side note, like this isn't costing Tompkins County. It's really just a partnership and building relationships with other counties as well.
But it certainly would cost Onondaga and Broome if they needed to build towers for
Right.
a redundant.
So if
system.
we're providing ours, we should get some credit for that.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Michael Stitley or Rich? Okay. I see none. Let's do a roll call vote.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 nos.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Michael, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next, let's hop back to legislator privilege of the floor. And then we will plan on taking a break at around 7:30. Okay, let's see here. Amanda or Deb and then Amanda.
Yeah, so this pertains to LGBTQ Pride Month. To most people, like myself, who are just your standard cisgender uninteresting people, the LGBTQ community seemed like a monolith. I've recently learned that it's beautifully diverse. And for a county that prizes diversity the way ours does, I thought I would take advantage of sharing with everybody the information about all these flags that you'll see on everybody's desks. More than just this original LGBTQ flag, we've got several other ones. This one is the bisexual flag, pink and purple and blue. This one is the transgender flag. I like this one, it's pastel. There is another flag that I don't have, but Annie and Veronica have them. It's pink, yellow, and blue. It's pansexual. And then finally, this one's probably the best one. This one's kind of tiny, so I'm gonna hold up this. And the explanation for this is the progress flag. It not only has the colors of the original Pride flag, but it has these arrows that represent transgender individuals and brown and black individuals, with an arrow showing that we are moving towards progress and acceptance of all of these groups. So that's your Pride lesson for today.
Thank you, Deborah. Amanda Champion.
Thanks, Deb, for the education, and thanks to Ann Corman for bringing in all these
And
flags for
Veronica.
us. And Veronica, thank you. Let's see, I have two things I want to share. The first one is that some of you may remember that a while ago, early last year, we passed a resolution requesting that the state pass a bill banning puppy mills in New York. New York is one of the largest retailers of puppy mill dogs. And there was a bill that came forward, and I wrote a resolution most of us voted on it. I think it was unanimous. I can't remember. Anyway, the state Senate, earlier this year, they also voted for that bill, and just recently, the Assembly voted for it as well. So now it will go to the governor's desk and hopefully she will sign it. Part of the problem is that a lot of these puppies come from other states where they have the mills. So now this bill, assuming it's signed, will prohibit stores from buying these puppies. So you won't be able to get puppy mill puppies. And if you don't know about puppy mills, I'm not going to go into it. It's a horrible, horrible thing. Don't get your puppies from a puppy mill. Go to a SPCA or a qualified breeder. Puppy mills are bad for dogs. So anyway, that's one good news, hopefully. The second thing I want to say is that I did not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I do not intend to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance any longer. I believe we have a serious problem in this country. We have a lot of problems in this country, but when our government and our society values the right to a weapon of mass destruction in any person's hands without regulation over my right to send my child to school and know he's not going to get shot, I feel like we have a problem. Our children are not safe, and this country is doing nothing about it. And I will no longer stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. Greg Muzzy.
Yeah, this one, I appreciate the celebration of Pride Month and the recognition and the support for many of my colleagues around the table. I think it's, for me, somebody who grew up in the Midwest in a relatively, conservative Christian home, the thought of sitting here someday with a progressive pride flag at my desk and being able to talk about this and be comfortable with who I am is very personal to me. So I know there's probably not people watching, but there may be somebody watching at some point, or somebody may hear it and want to share it with somebody. Within our own community, we've got a lot of work to do to ensure equality and make progress, right? So I want to make sure we're first introspective in that conversation. But I also would just encourage people, you may not understand, you may not know what it means, but just have an open heart, an open mind, be willing to listen, ask tough questions, right? Because there's people that have sat probably quiet in their thoughts for a long time, asking themselves that question before they get to be comfortable with who they're really meant to be and who they are. So I just would want to encourage people this month as we talk about a number of different issues, but especially around the issues of sexuality and gender identity, that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not understand. It's okay to seek clarity, and it's okay to support. And it's okay to say, I love you, I believe in you. I may still not understand it, but you are who you are, and that's good enough for me. So I think it's just really important that during this time to sort of take and hold space for that. I think the next 11 months out of the year too, we should probably do that as well. But especially recognize, next time you see a rainbow flag or a rainbow, just say, you know what, who have I talked to today? Who have I told that I love? Who have I told that they're good enough? Who have I, supported? Because there's a lot of people out there that don't have the experience that I had. And I have to recognize that it may be a much more difficult road to discovering who oneself is. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to take that minute because this is a personal time for me, and appreciate seeing all of the flags in the chamber because it does mean a lot. And there's still a lot of learning that members of the community need to do. And so, yeah, I'll stop there, but was my time up?
No, sorry.
I mean, don't call me late for dinner.
Someone's at the door.
Yeah, exactly. But I thank you for this time, and I thank you for those that were here before us, that created a county that's inclusive and a place where people can feel safe and should feel safer. And we have work to still do, but we have a really great foundation, and I'm proud to be a Tompkins County resident. And I know Tompkins County is a place that people can come and live and be who they are, and that's a great thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg, for sharing that. And I am proud to call you my cornhole partner for the employee
I
picnic.
think that needs some explanation.
Yes. So we are having a cornhole competition at the employee picnic, and Greg and I are going to be partners.
And
So
Greg's blushing big time.
I know, that's good.
My suntan.
Yeah. Okay, next up, Ann Corman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, the comments from my colleagues. I would just like to add a couple things that, first off, I want to thank our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer for helping pretty much writing our LGBTQ plus.
God, I'm sorry.
Could someone get the door, please? And all the other work that you've done here for this county. I think we have one more meeting you'll be attending. Okay, so I won't say my full goodbyes yet, but we will miss Deanna Carithers, who will be leaving us later this month because she has some great opportunities. So we're very happy for you for that. I want to just let folks know we have a couple of Juneteenth events coming up. So please look for your emails for those events, and then hopefully those will be advertised more as they usually are. So keep an eye out for those. There's a couple coming up on I think 2 different ones next week. Madam Chair, I'm imagining you're going to also speak about the massacre in Texas.
I am.
Correct. So I won't say too much more about that, but it is something that affects us here locally and statewide, nationally. And I just also wanted to mention that I'm very happy that I read it real quick, but I believe the governor of New York State passed some restrictions on purchasing of semi-automatics that you have to be 21. I would really like to see bipartisan support in our federal government to ban all assault weapons, all semi-automatic assault weapons. And I'm glad that it seems like there's bipartisan support for this right now, at least for just some measure of gun control. And I want to thank my colleagues for bipartisan support of LGBTQ month. And I think that's about it. So, and thank you for comments too with the resolution that we passed earlier.
Great. Thank you, Ann. Mike Lane.
Thanks. Last couple of meetings, I've spoken kind of somberly, and I was kind of hoping we could talk about some things that were a little happier at this meeting. Had some great things going on. In Dryden, we had a wonderful Memorial Day celebration with a parade. A lot of people out, a lot of people so happy to be out emerging from the pandemic. We had a wonderful speech by the Tompkins County Veterans Service Officer, J.R. Claiborne, who spoke to the crowd, and it was very well received. We've got Dairy Day coming up this Saturday morning, parade at 9:30. Many good things to talk about. Unfortunately, they're overshadowed by more events that horrify us all. Whether you look afar to a place like Nigeria, where over 20 people were murdered and over 50 people were seriously injured by someone who went into a Catholic church and and shot people. Whether you look at some of the things that have happened over the weekend in the Philadelphia area. And of course, the awful thing that happened in Texas, on top of the awful thing that happened in Buffalo. Where are we going? We all want to see a change. We can't go in two directions at the same time. And I think this, maybe I'm looking back 50 years, Mike, but maybe we ought to, when there was respect for law and order. I can still remember the first mass shooting in Texas from the tower. Shocked the nation, never heard of such a thing. And now we hear it every week. We can make some progress on guns, I hope. We also have to support our police officers who are out there all the time. And we can't always think that they are trying to do something evil. They are good people too. We try to protect us. Right now, police don't know where they are because they don't know whether they have the support of their communities or not. Take a look at what's happening in San Francisco or Los Angeles right now with the support having over there. We may see a sea change. We may not like it. As the people, the vast majority of the people in the middle, not the far right, not the far left, but the vast majority of the people want to go about their lives safely and provide for their families. And they don't have to change everything overnight. And they don't have to be, they don't have to hate one another. I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, and I'm going to end, but I just want to say that things have to change, and we have to be more accepting of one another and talk not past each other, but with each other. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Randy Brown.
Yes, thank you. I support common sense. Gun control, I think a nationwide check system is very important. That's a good place to start. But I want to thank Frank Krupa for writing an op-ed about mental health and specifically children when he mentioned that. And I think it's in speaking to teachers, principals, superintendents, they're really worried about our kids and their mental health. And it's in my opinion, it's not been a priority for enough people, and that includes the county. I think that Tompkins County is abundant, has a lot of talent, natural resources, but unfortunately too many residents don't have access to it or perceive that they have access to it. We need a commitment to act now to figure that out. Our children are exposed to video media well beyond healthy limits. COVID-19 amplified this. Studies have shown for years the negative effects of excessive gaming, video, and cell phone use. And let's recognize those implications. We've ignored them, and we've let people just continue to play with this stuff. We as a society are responsible for the mental and physical challenges our youth face and the failures that we have witnessed all too often. We need to focus, identify opportunities that are abundant around us and present them consistently, efficiently to our youth. We must engage those that are marginalized and offer them experiences, hope, and friendships. Our towns, schools, businesses, and people with resources must participate and collaborate more in our communities. Our outstanding colleges must seize the opportunity, and they're not, and establish formal relationships to benefit our communities and institutions. Now is the time. Any barriers or perceived expense must not stop us from doing the right thing. It's not expensive to do what we want to do. Our schools and reliable technology are critical to making progress, but families have the biggest impact on their children's future. We must work proactively with families, especially our disadvantaged families, and increase access to resources. This is an urgent issue with a significant increase in funding is needed by our towns and our county and the colleges and people, and the county needs to take the lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Any other questions, comments for public comment, legislator?
Shauna, you were going to
Thank
talk
you.
about the one flag there too later?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I actually have the Philadelphia Pride flag and it is behind me. And I'll actually just throw up a picture here. It's the one with all the colors. And in 2017, a new interpretation of the Pride flag emerged, named for the city where it was first created. The Philadelphia flag added stripes of black and brown to the previous 6 colors, thus better representing and advocating for LGBTQA plus people of color. Okay, thanks for doing that, Veronica and Annie. I appreciate your commitment to teaching all of us a little bit more about Pride Month. So I am going to move on to the chair's report really quickly, and then I'm assuming after that we might take a quick break. So on May 24th, I was in Houston, Texas, taking care of my ailing grandparents. Houston is 4 hours away from Uvalde, Texas. I was watching the television in a restaurant as the news came on and announced that 19 students and 2 teachers had been killed by a shooter. I sat there thinking of my own kids that attend our local public schools and how they could have just as easily been the target of such a heinous crime. There's absolutely nothing I could have done to protect them. While I was in Houston, I kept thinking about the accessibility of firearms, the relaxed laws that they have. And one thing that both Houston and Tompkins County share is the lack of mental health services and treatment options. A few days later, on May 27th, as I was boarding my plane to come back to Ithaca, I received a call from County Administrator Lisa Holmes. She told me that there was an active shooter. 1 person had been shot. Our Human Services building was on lockdown and that the shooter had not been apprehended. While I'm not blindsided to the crime that we are seeing in the city, this specific incident really hit home. As a county legislator, I believe that many of us feel that it's our jobs to protect our staff and our community. We designate funding for community programs to make our streets safer, for housing, for treatment, for detox, and for mental health services. The past few weeks, I've tried to make sense of the gun violence that I've seen surrounding me. Then yesterday, as we were in our weekly leadership meeting, Lisa takes a call and lets Deb and I know that there's been yet another incident, and this time it was a stabbing at our Human Services building. I think it's imperative that in this chair's report that I address the recent violent incidents that have taken place near our Human Services building on Seneca Street. While none of our staff were targeted or injured, it is upsetting to me that 2 individuals were shot and 1 individual was stabbed multiple times in the past few weeks. This violence is impacting our employees, community members, local families, and organizations in the area, and it has got to stop. I understand that law enforcement has been quick to respond to these incidents. Those harmed have been treated, and I'm thankful that our Sheriff's Department has stepped up to provide additional details in the area this week. Thank you to the staff who have been vigilant and quick to respond in these situations, whether it be communicating with our staff, locking down or evacuating our buildings, or complying with law enforcement on the scene. We're working closely with the Sheriff's Department and the local police department, and there is work that is being done to increase the safety of our buildings and for our staff. And I expect more to come, including what will be shared by Lisa Holmes in this evening's update. The work our county does is important, and we value the staff members who come to work every day to serve the community. We should be doing all that we can to provide a safe environment and a safe area for clients seeking services. Thank you to the departmental leadership who are here tonight and who are working on these issues. As we look at ways to provide a safer environment for our staff, We must balance that with the service we provide our community. We want everyone that walks through our doors, whether it is to sign up for temporary assistance or checking into probation, to feel welcome. We want our community to feel safe and to retain their dignity when receiving services. While future conversations might be difficult, the common goal for all of us is to provide a safe place for our employees and a welcoming place for our constituents. Administration will continue to communicate with the legislature and the staff. As safety plans are discussed with city and county law enforcement, department heads and staff, they will also be reported to this legislature. I want to thank Lisa Holmes for her leadership, along with our department heads, Dan Cornell from Probation, Kate Shanks Booth from Youth Services, and Kit Kephart from Department of Social Services. I also want to make note that there are going to be a few upcoming departures in county administration. Despite promising not to make a big deal of our departures, I think it's only fair to thank Amy Hendricks and Deanna Carruthers for their service to Tompkins County as they both transition out of the organization and to other roles. Amy has worked at Tompkins County for over 10 years and has been instrumental in much of the progress this organization has made in the past decade. Thank you, Amy, for your service. And she's on vacation right now.
She has a family health issue that came up, so she couldn't be with us tonight.
Well, I will get to say her part in 2 weeks then. Anyway, we wanted to thank Amy for her service and her efforts, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Deanna has been at the county for 2 years and served as our very first Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, tackling issues head on, sometimes a little bit too fast for some of our legislators. But she has been at the helm of the critical work that we have had in our county and the success and the education of teaching many of us. We thank Deanna for doing so much to set the tone and to bring our people together. So we will miss both of you, and we wish you the best in the future. And there's still time to say that you aren't going to leave. So with that, I would like to take a 10-minute break and grab some snacks in the chair's office, and we'll resume in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Blame somebody.
Makes it easy for them.
Staff all the time.
Right.
So it's easier for them.
Well, you got to put the nuclear close to the city.
I blame you.
Right next door here. Right there. That's cool.
Fair enough.
Okay, I got the right accusation.
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's resume our meeting by having a report by our county administrator, Lisa Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a reimagining public safety update tonight, but prior to that, I wanted to speak to the recent incidents of violence around the Human Services Building as well, and update you all on how we've been addressing the after action building safety and communications and what the county has done over the past several months around these issues. I will also add that I spoke about this with county staff at our monthly staff town hall meeting last Friday. So following the shooting of 2 community members on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend on State Street, and I understand both individuals are recovering from the shooting, thankfully. I convened departmental leadership and emergency responders for an after action meeting to discuss what transpired, how we responded, and what needed to be improved. And walking away from that first meeting, I recognize we have more work to do in how we inform staff during incidents. Not all staff in our departments in the area were notified in a timely manner of what was happening and what to do. And as an immediate follow-up measure, the Department of Emergency Response is coordinating with Human Resources and ITS to update lists of employees in the siren notification system every 2 weeks and train departmental leadership on how to use the system most effectively to notify staff during an event. We'll also be looking at replacing the overhead intercom system in the Human Services Building. This week we'll be meeting again, I believe it's tomorrow, to discuss building lockdown and evacuation procedures in a case of an event where either would be required. And I will say that the evacuation of the Human Services Building, while there was still police presence in the area on Seneca Street after the shooting, went smoothly. I thank departmental leaders and HSB security staff for their efforts to make that happen in a safe and orderly way. And I too want to add my thanks to the sheriff for assigning a detail in the area this week. We've also done a number of things over the past year related to safety in the area, and I'd like to share some of those as well. I believe it was late last summer or early fall, the sheriff conducted a walkthrough of the Human Services Building and determined that recent changes in security protocols and improvements to the building had been effective. Had facilities who looked at lighting in the county parking lots and reached out to the city for the areas where there's city-owned lighting in the streets and the lots to improve or replace lights as needed. County administration convened a meeting with staff, the next door neighbor at the Human Services Building, and as well as Human Services leadership to discuss proactive measures being taken in the area. And staff has since made some security improvements to its building, including fencing around its backyard and additional staffing in the building, particularly on Fridays, which seem to be days of high activity in the area. We've met with city officials regarding safety and security in the area, and we have another meeting coming up soon on this topic. Our previous mayor had appointed a task force to address issues on the West State Street corridor, and county administration, namely Amy Hendricks, participated for the better part of a year in those meetings. We're currently updating building safety and security plans across all county buildings as part of our workplace violence and prevention efforts that are routine. We've followed up and reviewed incident reporting, and a process has been clarified to include all of the involved parties, and we're updating those forms. And again, in that interim period, we've replaced the Swift 911 system with the siren notifications, and coming up with a plan now to use that for staff notifications in the event of emergencies. There's a need for further consideration of additional building security options throughout the county, and we'll be assessing those options. We also have to tend to the need of our employees, as several of them have expressed feeling stressed and traumatized from these recent incidents that have occurred near their work. Most recently, we've pointed staff toward the Employee Assistance Program for support and offered on-site support last week. And I continue to ask supervisors to reach out to see what else employees need. So there are really multiple factors converging to make this area a hotspot downtown. There are issues of poverty, substance abuse, mental health, and expectations for law enforcement response all coming to a head in this area, which require a more thorough and ongoing response from all of us in the longer term. And I think we'll need to continue to work with our community partners and find new approaches to address these longer term issues. And we're going to keep working on these multiple fronts and keep the legislature updated of the progress as we continue. So I'll pause there to see if there are any questions.
Mike Lane.
Interested in this this group that you talked about that Amy's been part of, talk about the safety in State Street area there. This county made a substantial commitment to the city of Ithaca in the 1990s, and that was to move our social services program downtown off West Hill. And we built the building, we bought the property, we built the building. And I think that we need to feel confident that the city understands that our large number of employees there need to feel safe. And I think we have a right to look to the city to understand better how they are going to provide better security in their city on their main street for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. There will be a conversation next week with city, county, as well as the chief and the sheriff. So more to come on that conversation. Lee Shirtliff.
I got a lot of thoughts coming in tonight, but I want to thank you, Shauna, for your statements earlier, and Lisa for your comprehensive report, and Mike for your sentiments. I don't think there's anything more to add. I have every confidence that things are being addressed for the safety of our clients and our staff. And I thank you for taking this head on and doing it.
Henry Granison.
Yes, I used to attend those State Street sessions. Lisa, are they over yet? Has a report been made back to the city?
My understanding is that I don't believe they've been continuing with the new mayor, but it's something we can certainly bring up when we meet next week.
Okay, thank you.
I also think part of the problem with those meetings, Henry, is that there was plenty of appointed city people, but there really was not much representation from the county end. So at some point, we can revamp that and actually have city or county participation in that.
Well, Amy was always there.
Right. But not in the early ones. I don't think
Oh,
she was. Yeah. Any other questions or comments for Lisa Holmes? Okay.
And then Thank you, Madam Chair. I also had wanted to recognize and introduce then Mona Lita Smiley and Sheriff Osborne for a reimagining update this evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'll get started and then I'll turn it over to Sheriff Osborne. So an update from the CJC is that progress is continuing to be made with the city and the county for the CJC contract. And we are going to be resuming the routine project management meetings next week. And that'll be both city and county, the collaborative. And we're looking forward to launching the alternative response for the crisis intervention and wraparound health and human service delivery plan. And we're also looking forward to re-engaging in the community healing plan process and building trust with the residents of the minoritized communities. So, you know, once we come back together, we got a lot of things to look forward to. But I think one of the most exciting things right now is what I'm going to turn over to Sheriff Osborne to give an update on what's happening up there at the Sheriff's Department.
Great. Thanks, Mona. I'm just going to share my screen. Let's see. All right. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, I'm going to apologize. There's nothing like being asked to do a quick presentation 2.5 hours into a meeting. So don't hold it against me. Anyway, to me, this is very exciting. I'm excited to discuss this with you and show you what we're doing. This is our one recommendation that we've been working on, the unarmed pilot program at the Sheriff's Office. If you recall, it's a 3-year pilot program where we hired 2 sheriff clerks to attempt to handle non-emergency calls for services, either over the telephone or in-house here at the Sheriff's Office. We have no idea at this point. I'm free to admit that, you know, regarding how this is going to work, although I'm very excited about it, and I believe it's going to be hugely successful. What this will do, again, is we'll have the 2 sheriff clerks that will handle certain call types that I'll show you in a minute. This is twofold. It provides us an opportunity to provide an alternative response, what the community is asking for, but it also frees up our current sheriff's deputies to better respond to emergency calls, have more time on their investigations, and to spend more time building the relationships that are greatly needed with members of our community. It's specific to the Sheriff's Office. This is different than the City of Ithaca's plan, and it also does not impact the jurisdictions that have their own local police departments, such as the Village of Trumansburg, Village of Groton, or Dryden. We do anticipate that because we share patrol areas with the New York State Police, that we can possibly see increased calls being handled by the Sheriff's Office through the sheriff clerks. Again, just simply because we share jurisdiction with them, and when the calls come into the dispatch center, if a sheriff clerk is working, there's an increased opportunity to provide that call to a sheriff clerk rather than a New York State Police trooper or a road patrol deputy. Some of you probably saw this before. It was presented numerous times. What we have here is our call activity through 2021. And again, this is just the Sheriff's Office. This doesn't include the New York State Police calls, City of Ithaca, or any of our village police departments. Our more serious crimes obviously are fewer and far between. But then at the bottom of the graph, you see our traffic safety issues, property checks, property crimes. We have an enormous amount of call activity in those areas. That is the area that we're trying to focus the attention of our sheriff's clerks, and we think we'll get the most bang for our buck. The call types that we're going to use, we've selected 7 to start with. They're listed here, car versus deer MVAs, which you may or may not believe how many of those we get. It's astronomical. Each one of those requires a deputy to respond to deal with and taking them off other important activities. As you can imagine, having 3 to 4 deputies on at any time in the county, the last thing we really need to be doing is spending an inordinate amount of time handling car deer motor vehicle accidents. Traffic issues and complaints. These are the calls that are not so much related to something happening right at that moment, but perhaps somebody in a certain neighborhood would call the sheriff's office or dispatch to complain about a frequent problem they're seeing, either speeding in their neighborhood, running a stop sign, anything along those lines. We can funnel those calls when they come into dispatch or the sheriff's office through the sheriff clerks to at least take that initial complaint and prevent the need to send an armed deputy to somebody's house to interview them about this type of complaint. They can then take the information they receive, generate a report, and that'll put out to road patrol deputies to then know about the incident or issue that's happening in that neighborhood and to check it more frequently if need be. Certain property complaints. One of them is lost DMV items. Oftentimes people lose license plates, driver's licenses, and believe it or not, they have to come through law enforcement to get the proper paperwork completed to then go to DMV and take care of that issue. That is something we see not needing an armed response for that a sheriff clerk could easily handle. Next is vacant property check requests. They won't be leaving the building and going and checking on properties, but again, they can take that initial report, interact with the community member, and put that on file at the sheriff's office. And what that is a service we provide for people that are usually going out of town on vacation that may like a deputy just to swing by and check and make sure things are right at their home or their business. We also receive a lot of complaints regarding frauds and telephone scams. These are incidences that almost nearly never have a suspect. They're very difficult to solve, if not impossible. Again, typically now, if somebody called in that type of complaint, we'd send an armed deputy to their home or business to take that report. These will now be funneled through the sheriff clerk to start that process. If we need to, we can turn it over to an investigator later if a suspect develops. Larceny and thefts with no suspects. Oftentimes we get complaints of shoplifting or thefts from residential property. Things could have happened 3 days ago and then finally somebody notices it and calls us. There's absolutely no suspects and very little opportunity to even identify one. Those type of calls are also well suited to be handled by sheriff clerks. Again, if we notice a trend in a certain neighborhood of a large amount of larcenies or thefts, that will also be reported to road patrol to keep an extra eye in that area or our investigators if need be. Lastly, we decided to try out noise complaints. This one may be a little more difficult, but we're going to give it a try. These include, loud parties at night, loud music, things of that nature. We'll funnel the call through the sheriff clerks, and they will attempt using our records management system known as Spillman to hopefully identify who the offending party is and simply give them a call and ask them to knock it off. If it doesn't work, we easily have the ability, if the complaint is not resolved, we can always send a deputy later, but that's where we're going to start. Dispatching calls, we spent a lot of time with Mike Stitley and his group. Again, this is going to be something new, not only for us, but for his operation. How do we get these calls when they come into the 911 center? We had to work through the logistics of it, of what questions dispatchers were going to ask in making that determination if it's a call best suited for a sheriff clerk or a deputy. We think we got that worked out, but time will tell. And we're going into this with an open mind and knowing that we're going to come up with a lot of things as we start moving forward with this that we're going to have to work out as we go. Once implemented, when someone calls 911 for assistance and it's within our jurisdiction, again, that decision will be made whether it's a sheriff clerk or a deputy. Yeah. You'll see here, I know you've seen this many times. This is our organizational chart at the sheriff's office. You can see in red where the civilian response unit, these two sheriff clerks will be housed. We had a great deal of discussion on this, and we decided that it was best to fall under the supervision of our road patrol sergeants. We have 6 road patrol sergeants in total, 2 working each of our 3 shifts. The reason we did that is because we have knowledge that oftentimes calls that come into dispatch and are dispatched to a deputy, they come in one way, and oftentimes upon arrival, it ends up being something completely different. It could be less than we thought it would, or it could be much worse than we anticipated. Having them directly report to the road patrol sergeant puts the sergeants in direct supervision over both them and the road patrol deputies. The sergeants know what's going on in the county and the call activity at all times, and they can easily switch things from one unit to the other. So I think that's the best use of that, and it eliminates any potential disconnect between those responding to the calls. If a sheriff clerk receives a call and they make contact with the complainant and it turns into a bigger issue than we thought it was, they can notify the sergeant and the deputy can quickly respond, and vice versa. Again, these 2 positions will work inside the sheriff's office. We have no plans to have them sent out into the community. Office space was created for them in the PSP with computer monitors and telephones right off the sergeant's office, and they'll handle things that way. They may have limited contact with the public when they show up to the sheriff's office to file a report. If it falls within that category, we'll certainly have them greet the complainant and handle that issue. One thing I didn't mention, the training of this, these positions, we've identified the 2 employees that have been selected. They've been hired, they've gone through stringent background investigations, just like a deputy would for the most part. They are scheduled to start this coming up Monday. So we're really excited about that. We will have a sergeant working hand in hand with them for at least 2-3 weeks to get them comfortable with everything. And then he will remain with them even in the longer term until they're completely comfortable to start handling calls completely on their own. Where we have to continue working on this, again, it's a pilot program. Deanna and Mona have been working, alongside Dominic to get this on the Public Safety Reimagination website and trying to figure out ways we can best track the progress of this, receive community input as to how we can measure success of this program. And I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to come back to you after a year and explain to you how successful this has actually been. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sheriff. I also want to thank you for being open to this conversation. I know that the city hasn't always had the best relationship with their city council and the Ithaca Police Department. And I know that at the beginning of Reimagine Public Safety, there were times where it was hard to have the conversations, but I want to thank you and your staff for being open to having the conversation, having the hard conversations at times, and also being someone that is at the table and collaborating. I've always valued our partnership, the legislature and the sheriff's department. And I am very hopeful that Reimagine Public Safety is going to be successful in our county in due part to the hard work that you and your deputies do. So thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you and the other legislators as well. You've all been hugely supportive, so I appreciate that. It certainly makes our job a lot easier. And I got to say, with this recommendation and plan, our deputies are huge, very excited as well. They see this as a way to lessen, the caseload that they have to deal with day in and day out. And I think it's going to be wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Sheriff. And thank you, Mona, for coming tonight. Are there any questions from legislators or comments? Mike Lane.
Hi, Derek. I'm glad to see you trying this. You've got 2 positions. What happens to the 7 kinds of calls when neither of them are working?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. Thanks for asking that. And I probably should have mentioned something along these lines. What we'll do during the training process is having them work Monday through Friday with our typical union contractual schedule. So it'll probably be 7 to 3. We may change it to like 8 to 4, 9 to 5 in the beginning. Eventually, when they're set to go out completely on their own, we're hoping to have them work 4 10-hour shifts so we can then schedule them for our busiest times. Our busiest times typically are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, usually in the evening hours, late afternoon to early evening. So we'll have them work a 4-10 schedule, 4 days, 10-hour shifts on those days. With 2, obviously, that's not going to be enough to cover us 24/7. But the way we're scheduling them, it will we'll have them available to us at our busiest times when call activity is most high. I think that's a smart way to go. You know, and if this is as successful as we think it is, and it's something the legislature decides to maybe increase the number of sheriff clerks, then I guess we'll have to have that discussion down the road. So typically, Mike, if they're not available, it'll just fall back to the way it's always been done, and deputies will have to respond. There's no other way around that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the sheriff or Mona? Ann Corman?
I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you to all who worked on this, and Deanna and Mona and Derek and your department, that this is something really concrete that you've come up with, and it's about having people go out that do have skills. It's an unarmed person that's going out, and that, you know, like you said, probably is not needed for these type of issues. And so I know it took a lot of work to figure this out. And I've always thought about that we could have different levels of people responding to different calls for different issues. But most communities don't have that. And so I realize this is a pilot program, and it really seems from what you said, you're very open. It's designed to have feedback from the community. And I think that's a really important piece. So thank you for doing this.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, Monalita, for presenting today. It was definitely the highlight of our meeting, Sheriff.
All right, you guys all have a good night. Thank you so much.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, Lisa Holmes, do you have any other announcements or?
That's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. County Attorney Bill Troy.
I have nothing of note to report. It's been quiet.
Okay, that's good news. Director of Finance, Rick Snyder. Rick, are you with us? Oh, there we go.
Thank you very much. We have 2 short things to inform you of tonight. And the first one is that we had our auction preview meeting last night at the Eagles Club. This is for the county's foreclosure auction, which is scheduled for next Monday night on the 13th of June at 7 o'clock at the Eagles Club. We have a scheduled preview every year where we invite the public to come in and view the properties, and the auctioneer goes through the terms of the auction. We had a very good turnout last night at 7 p.m. with 40 individuals showing up with interest in these properties, at which point the auctioneer goes through each and every one of those properties with a slideshow presentation. So we look forward to having a good crowd come back next Monday night for the actual auction. Those 40 people that showed up last night are relatively new to the auction process. There was only 3 or 4 people who had only ever attended an auction or bid at an auction before. So we had quite a few new faces show up at our auction preview last night. If anyone's interested in coming to the county foreclosure auction, it will be at 7 o'clock p.m. on Monday, June 13th at the Eagles Club. And that address is at 161 Cecil Malone Drive in Ithaca. And my second item for tonight is to update you on the 2 staff vacancies that we've had. I think I mentioned at the last meeting, or it could have been at one of the committee meetings that I report at, that we had filled the accounts payable position, and then that person changed their mind and we had to go back to the drawing board. But we were able to interview and successfully find another candidate who has since been researched and sent an offer for that position, and they have accepted. So we will be bringing on board an individual for that financial accounts payable clerk position on, I believe it's June 26th. And we're looking forward to that, of course. We also had an acceptance of the offer for the Director of Accounting Services. And so I'm pleased to announce that both of those positions have now been filled. And that individual starts also on, it's the 27th. Both of them start on Monday, June 27th. So that's all I have to report for this evening. I'll take any questions if you have some for me.
Thank you, Rick. Any questions for Rick? I don't see any hands. Thank you, Rick,
Okay.
for coming tonight.
All right, maybe we'll see you at the auction next Monday night.
Thank you.
We only have 12 properties, so it will be fairly short, less than an hour, I'm sure.
That's a good thing.
That's a very good thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I would like to recognize Kathy Covert.
Thank you. We have a chief deputy clerk position that's been vacant in the office for the last 5 months since Michelle Coco retired at the end of 2021. But I would like to recommend and ask for your confirmation to appoint Katrina McCloy as the chief deputy clerk position effective June 27th.
Can I have a mover, please?
Yes.
A unanimous. Okay. Okay. Can we all move that?
Well,
Unanimous
no.
second.
Okay. Mike Lane moves and then Deborah Dawson seconds.
Thank you.
Okay. And we will do a roll call.
Yes. Veronica Pillar? Yes. Lee Shirtliff?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Definitely.
Deborah Dawson?
Absolutely.
Henry Granison?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Absolutely.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 noes. Thank you.
I would like to say thank you, and I'm honored that you have a vote of confidence in me, and I'll put forth every effort in the role as Chief Deputy Clerk and to serve this legislature. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are very happy and honored to have you working at Tompkins County. And this is a great promotion. Katrina has always helped me, and I know many others in a bind. She is a very go-to person, if you know what I mean. And we are happy to see you go right into this promotion. So thank you, Katrina. Okay, moving on. Let's see here. Let's do standing committees. Is that right? Oh, resolutions added to and withdrawn from the resolution or from the agenda? I'm tired. Okay, none. And let's go on to standing and special committees. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
We met on May 19th and we had some resolutions that have been handled on the consent agenda for the airport, already been done. We had a nice presentation from the facilities department, Arel Lamaro. I found it quite fascinating because he was able to display on the screen for us what in real time our security cameras around our campus are seeing. There are security cameras at different, and not only the campus, but other buildings such as mental health, where we could actually see people coming and going, cars coming and going. Some of the cameras could be zoomed, some weren't. But it was fascinating. I mean, I, for one, have known the cameras are out there, but I never really thought much about what they're looking at and what they see. And I think it ought to give us a sense of good feeling that we have those security cameras going on. They hold information, I think he told us, for 30 days. And that has been increased from some of the old programming that they used to have, which was a shorter time that it was stored. I think the committee will be taking up a review of some of the cameras and to see whether we think we need more cameras or not. We'll be talking about that at a future meeting. But I thought you might like to know about that, and I was pleased to be able to see that. We had some discussion about the downtown facilities. We've authorized the facilities department to go ahead with Holt engineers to update the space use plan that they had worked on previously. And we're going to invite them into our next meeting so that we can talk with them and get an idea of what they're seeing and share our ideas, if we have any, with them as well. I think I mentioned last time about the Tompkins Cortland Community College Capital Construction Projects Committee, and that we've had one meeting already at the college, and Randy Brown and I are the two representatives from our legislature, and they're two from Cortland. And we will be meeting again this month and seeing how we can move some of the capital projects forward and with the grant money that TC3 has and funding that the two counties have made available. Randy, anything else we should mention? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike Lane? Okay, thank you. Next, Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We met last Thursday and had a nice crisp meeting. Some of the things we've already done in consent agenda. One of the main things that we had a report on and discussion about was our independent redistricting commission. The chair of that commission and several members came along with Greg Potter from our IT department and gave us their report they shared, and you can find that all on the county web redistricting website page. There's a page. You can also go back and watch the meeting, but they will also be coming to our next legislature meeting to give a report. So everyone has a chance to digest the information, look at what they're recommending, and ask questions. And then beyond that, we'll have the report come back to government operations next month, and we will have a vote on if we want to pass this or not. It's fascinating. They did a lot of great work. I highly encourage you to check out the new maps. The big news would be that the legislature would move from 14 to 16 members. So we'll have to cut some of our staff out here at the big table.
Or gets.
Bill's
volunteering.
Bill's ready to go. Okay.
See ya.
Take the cheap seats.
So yeah, so I think that's all. And then we have a resolution to discuss.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I've heard a couple of my colleagues express some concerns about the proposal that came out of the commission. And I was wondering what the process is if we don't think that their proposal is an altogether great idea.
That's a good question. And I can briefly say, but Bill probably knows better than me. The charter does allow for the legislature to return the recommendation back to the commission with our ideas and recommendations. If you know, I guess we would have to come to a conclusion and a vote to say, no, we reject this and here's what we want instead, or here's our ideas. So we have sort of one opportunity to do that. And then they could look at it and revise it or not, and then they would send it back to us. But is that somewhat correct?
Yes,
Bill?
that's correct. But the people who worked in this committee were just amazing. I mean, they know the math. I don't know how Greg Potter does it. And I think you're going to find them very cooperative. They worked very hard. I was at all these meetings. I'm not a math guy, so I sat quietly, but they really worked hard and came up with a voluminous number of maps that everyone really agreed on.
Yeah, and I think they also, which I assume that they'll explain when they come to the whole legislature, they have reasoning for everything that they did and they chose. And, you know, they had, you know, the sort of outline of what they were hoping to do, and they did their very best to fall within that outline. And it's all, to me, you know, very reasonable. But yes, there is an opportunity if the majority of the legislature does not feel like it's the best option, we can send it back and then ask them to revise, and they can, you know, they would bring it back. And then we do at some point have to vote on a plan. So ideally it would be this plan because they're the ones who put in all the work, but we could reject it. I mean, that's a possibility. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Amanda? Okay.
Okay. We have resolution H, adoption of local law number, I don't know what number it is, of 2022, allowing the county to continue holding virtual public meetings. And I would move that.
Seconded by Greg Muzzy.
So we have talked about this a couple of times at GO. We had a public hearing tonight. Basically, what you have in front of you is what the state has told us. There's really very little information. Bill has taken that information, put it together, and this is what we got. So I hope everyone has read it. I assume you have. It does allow that we can continue to hold virtual public meetings. The public and staff and guests can all attend virtually. But for members of the body, we need to have a quorum physically present. And people can attend virtually, members of the body can attend virtually, but they will not be counted towards quorum, although they will be able to vote. So one of the biggest differences is that members of the body need to be present. That's the goal here. We're moving out of this time of emergency situation, and we need folks to be present because that's, I think many of us agree that we do our best work when we're all in the same room. But if there are extraordinary circumstances, which are defined as a disability, an illness, caregiving responsibilities, or other significant or unexpected factors. Maybe a family member gets sick, maybe you have a traffic accident, but then you make it home. Something that prevents you from actually being in person, you can still attend virtually. it does not count if you're on vacation and just, I mean, you can still attend, but it's a very tricky and fine line about, I just don't want to be there today in person. So the idea is to really aim for folks to get back together and be here in person. So anyway, I'll stop rambling, but I think it's a good step. It still gives us some flexibility for, a little while longer.
Mike Lane and then Rich John.
We heard a member of the public speak at the public hearing on this. And I didn't think that person understood that person was asking us to amend this to change it in some way, particularly with people with disabilities. But it's my understanding, Bill, and maybe you could speak to this, that this is basically what we can do according to what the state law says.
Absolutely.
We don't really have a way to amend the state law other than if we wanted to job on them or something.
I ask you all to remember, I'm the scrivener, not the author of this. I mean, this came out of Albany and we can't change it. Only the state government can.
Thank you.
Same question.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Amanda?
I mean, I would just add too, like, we don't have to do this. And then we could just force everyone to be in person all the time. Like, that's the option here. We can opt in or we can not. And basically those are our options. So I think it is good that it does allow non-members of any given board to be virtual, but the members should be present.
Thank you. Annie and then Veronica.
Thank you. There's a separate allowance, and I've had some people ask me this at the municipal meetings that I go to. So I don't know if you wanted to speak to this, but there's a separate allowance that's different than this that say, if I wanted to, and the example that was given to me, I was like, so if somebody wanted to go publicize that place. So like if I wanted to go, say, at the Ulysses Town Hall and publicize that place ahead of time and open that up to the public, that's a separate thing. And this does not change that provision. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of
I
that.
would look to Bill. I don't think.
I'm not aware of that. But this is not a well-drafted statute.
No, but there's something different.
But I believe
I don't
you're
know.
correct, Ann. That is correct.
Sorry?
That is correct, what she is saying.
So maybe we need some education on that at some point.
Okay.
If it, like Veronica's saying, she doesn't. isn't
I don't
aware
understand
of
what you're
that.
saying at all. Can you elaborate? Sorry.
There's another provision in the open meetings law. I don't know, or if Kathy, if you want to say what it is, or I can try and you can.
I can try. A member can attend a meeting in a location that is advertised and open to the public. So for example, if you wanted to meet and join the meeting at the Village Hall, that would have to be advertised and made public and open to the public to attend at that site.
So that's a different provision than this.
That's the existing law.
Right.
That's
Right,
correct.
that's what I'm trying to say. There's a different provision in the existing law.
This doesn't
And this
address
is,
that.
a different thing, but I just wanted to say that that's still out there. Because there's some people have been asking me at the municipalities as they're trying to figure it out too. And that's not totally different, but it's different. And this does not affect that.
But bear in mind, we've had no court ruling saying that you have the double option. So we can
Yeah.
assume we do. But this is a statute that was designed specifically for this situation. I'll look into it for you, but we're in uncharted waters yet again.
Well, that was something that was there before COVID.
Right. But it's funny, they don't make any reference to it. So therefore you begin to wonder, did they really want to incorporate the two? I don't know. I will look at it.
Amanda and then Veronica.
Yeah, I think I would just say, even if a member of a board wanted to do that and meet at their town hall and advertise that location, they would have to have an extraordinary circumstance to do that. you can't just say, I want to go, no?
That's not the law.
But that's what this law says.
That's what this law, this is different.
What
this
law says, sorry.
We have two statutes that are not welded together very well. And this is unfortunately where we are. So I don't know when this open meetings law provision was passed, but it wasn't done at any time when these people were thinking together about everything. If that ever happened. I never said that.
Lisa, yeah, or,
So I'm going to look into it before we ever get to this, before the next meeting, and I'll give you my opinion, and I'll call Albany too. But this happens. There's a law in the books that no one pays much attention to. The legislature comes along and passes a new law. It never really incorporated the two.
right, this doesn't, right, that's
It would
what
be-
I'm
it
saying.
would be
This isn't,
strange.
there's no reference to taking out the other provision.
It would be strange
No,
if under this new provision, you have to have a good reason and then merge that with something saying you don't need a good reason at all. Just go ahead and use some other.
But the other one is you're advertising it, you're having it open to the public, so it's a lot different, I think.
Well, I think what they're pushing is they want people to get back together in the same room and talk to one another. That's my
That's right.
read on this.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Oh, Veronica?
No, sorry. I had one, maybe a silly question. So just to be clear, if someone is on vacation, like I know this says you need an extenuating circumstance to join virtually, but let's say you're going on vacation anyway, like people do. Does that mean like, even if you like are like physically and technologically capable of attending the meeting, you may not?
I don't think so. No, because it says you may still attend virtually. You won't count towards a quorum, but you may participate and vote. But that's what it says. I just read it right there.
Jeez.
So I don't know why, but you wouldn't count towards a quorum, but you may participate and vote.
But I thought that was what happens if you are attending remotely due to an extenuating circumstance.
Right.
I'm just reading what it says. I mean, which is not vacation.
Right.
So,
okay. I feel like I kind of know the answer to my question. It just seems like an odd spirit of the thing. Like, it's not like, you know, as opposed to being like, I don't feel like coming to Chambers today, so I won't. It's like, I am going to Florida today, and that is just happening. But hey, why don't I call into the meeting anyway? And according to this law, I'd be like, sorry, no.
I think honestly, like, for me, I would just lean more on this and say, if and when at all possible, I can be in the meeting personally, that's what I should do.
Mm-hmm.
If there is some reason that it just doesn't make sense for me to get there, then that's fine. But don't plan your vacation if you can help it, you know, on during a meeting, or take a vacation and don't worry about it, you know? So, yeah.
I think also one thing too, we still have COVID. If you have COVID symptoms, please stay home.
Absolutely.
None of us want to get sick. So let's see here, Greg.
Sorry, my coughing is allergies. I promise, and I apologize for talking with a cough drop in my mouth. I guess again, I think that this is a start, right? This is where we go. This is the evolution of how things work. I'm sure we can always update this at times, and as we get more information, as more case law probably comes out to inform this. Again, I didn't go to law school, unlike many of my colleagues, so I don't fully understand how that process will work or who will challenge it. But I guess the question I have is, who determines, right, the extenuating circumstance, or who makes that? Is it the chair of the legislature that
Shauna.
says this is a extenuating circumstance, and maybe some travel would be considered that, right? And then the process for someone to challenge that is what? Because I do think that this is a little bit absent of that. But I also do think that this is what we need to get the ball rolling, and this is what we need to do. So I would fully support this, but it's not perfect, and it's a good foundation. We just have to put the siding on it at some point later on.
I think that's a great point. I don't want us to get wrapped up in the weeds here. I feel like we're going down a path. I have Veronica and Deb, if we could kind of wrap it up, because this is just essentially a resolution we're passing, and it gives us some guidelines. There is going to be a flexibility. No doubt there will be some more information coming out in the next few weeks. And this is just for us to pass the resolution so that we can continue to have meetings and some exceptions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one's not weedy. I just wanted to lift up again what the public commenter said about requiring being in person being like rough from a disability access standpoint. Thank you, Mike, for noting that that we don't legally have the option to really broaden the remote access capabilities from what is in this proposed law. All we would have is the option to make it more stringent by saying, let's not do that. And actually everyone does have to show up in person, but it does, I think there probably are people sitting on boards now. I know there are people sitting on boards that don't necessarily require, that aren't necessarily decision-making and don't necessarily come under open meetings law, but who would not be able to come in person to a meeting every month or every couple of weeks. And so this requirement basically kind of bans certain people from being in these bodies. Effectively bans some people from being in the legislature, even if there's not really that great of a reason why they wouldn't be able to do the work. I'm not proposing a fix to that because I don't think we can legally, but I do want to highlight it and wonder if it's something that anyone would be interested in advocating to the state about, or maybe that doesn't make sense, but I just think it's worth mentioning.
Thank you. Deb and then Rich.
Yeah, I just think we're making this more complicated than we need to. Clearly, the extraordinary circumstances are defined. If someone says, I cannot attend because of disability, illness, et cetera, I think you take them at their word. It's not up to Shauna or anybody else to police that.
That's right.
And then the other thing I would point out is simply that the third bullet point that says members may attend virtually due to extraordinary circumstances, it's pretty clear to me that the members who don't count towards a quorum but may participate and vote are members who are not attending due to extraordinary circumstances. So it's not if you're on vacation.
Thank you, Deb. Rich, John?
Yeah, since we spent so much time on it, and Greg mentioned all the lawyers in the room. I'll be a lawyer for a moment. That the language, and I assume this came from the state, is disability, illness, caregiving responsibilities, or any other significant or unexpected factor or event. Yeah, that's pretty broad when you really look at it. Now, I don't think my vacation is insignificant, but
I don't think it's extraordinary.
it depends where you go.
Are you going to
It depends
Rome?
where you go. But I think if you have a serious work obligation that demands that you travel, that would fit as a significant something that precludes your being here. And so I think there's more flexibility here than certainly I first saw. So, okay.
Remember the old lesson, learn what's right in somebody else's case.
All true. Yes, somebody else's case.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
No.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes,
13 ayes, 1 no.
thank you. Amanda, did you have anything else?
Well, I actually did have one other question for Bill about when this would be, when does this start?
When does it start?
Yeah,
I think it's in force now.
okay.
When does it end is a question I can't answer.
When does any of it end? I have nothing else.
I get
for
the
Geo.
impression that the
Kathy
state,
Covert actually
oh,
knows. Yep.
I think the executive order is in effect, right? The emergency executive order is in effect through June 14th,
Okay,
And then this goes.
and then this.
unless if that's extended.
Gotcha, right. Okay, that's great. Thank you. That's all I have for Geo.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee, Ann Corman, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our committee met on Monday, May 23rd, and we already discussed at length the resolution and the comments from our Department of Planning regarding New York State Climate Action Council scoping plan. And I just wanted to also mention that our committee, the climate, or liaison board, climate and sustainable energy, they also on their own review of it, the plan, submitted their own comments to the New York State too. So I wanted to thank them for that. And we were introduced to the new Director of Workforce Innovation at the Ithaca Area Economic Development Board. And her name is Daniel Zabo. So she came in person to meet with us and talk to us about the new program they're piloting. It's called the Direct to Work Initiative. And that's to address the workforce shortage in regional manufacturing. And they're going to be reaching out, especially to people as they're transitioning out of high school, to get hopefully younger folks into that line of work that pays very well and usually has good benefits. And that was, I would say that was the gist of it. Was there anything else that members wanted to add? Okay. And then we meet again on Monday, June 27th at 1:30.
Great. Thank you, Ann. Any questions for Ann Corman? Okay. Next is Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Deb Dawson, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we get to our resolution, I just wanted to give you all a preview of our exciting Monday meeting next week at 3 o'clock. We will be reviewing and hopefully adopting TC3's budget. And we will also, I am informed, be passing finally a formal resolution creating our Community Recovery Fund. We will be considering what funds we will be using for that. Questions have arisen about the appropriate use of the fund balance monies, so we may use some of that fund balance for our cash for capital and use the actual ARPA funds for the Community Recovery Fund, which is something that will be made possible because the final Treasury rule governing the monitoring and compliance requirements is apparently significantly less onerous than the rule that they initially warned us would be passed. So stay tuned for that exciting development, and you all are invited to tune in person or remotely next Monday at 3. Okay, so our resolution, number I, adoption of local law number blank of 2022, a local law overriding tax levy limit for 2023, ID 10908, and I move that.
Seconded by Rich John.
This resolution is a standard operating procedure resolution for the legislature. It simply covers our collective behinds. If due to exigent circumstances, our levy needs to be increased beyond the cap. As I said before, this rarely happens. And we certainly are not committing to going beyond the cap, nor are we expressing a desire to do so at this point.
Any questions or comments? Randy Brown?
I understand how the tax cap works. I was a school board for many years, so I know how that works and why you do it. But I feel that we need to make a statement. We shouldn't be raising our taxes. I'm hearing from everybody, the stress on them financially, especially people who are in fixed income situations, the cost of fuel, heating fuel, food, And then on top of that, many people who had their properties reassessed, and then you calculate that out. And I realize it's, only $8 or $9 a month. But it's still a burden, and we're just adding a straw to the camel's back, and people are really struggling. So I'm going to vote against it.
Thank you, Randy. Any other questions or comments? Mike Ziegler?
I vote against it every year, going to vote against it again. So I think, we do need to set a goal in this case, and I agree with Randy. So nice having you aboard, Randy.
If anything, you're consistent, Ziegler. Rich John?
I will be voting in support of the resolution. This is not about making that decision about whether to raise taxes. It is basically about giving us the flexibility. And while I believe there's some good common sense behind the idea of the New York State tax cap, the way the formula is designed and calculated each year, we've seen tremendous fluctuation in what the permitted amount is, so that it doesn't necessarily work at all in terms of sending a message to local governments on what they should be doing in terms of fiscal responsibility. In some years, we've been really, really limited, and we, way beyond what you would think would be a reasonable increase in expenditure. And then there have been other years where I believe the tax cap was close to 8%. I think this is a reasonable step for a local government to take to make sure that we have budgeting flexibility to serve our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich. Lee Sherliff?
I think I raised this at committee and I don't remember what the answer was. So can somebody help me? Timeline on this, the necessity of doing it at this point versus any other during the budget process or strictly in preparation. Can it be done at a later time if it's deemed necessary to exceed the tax cap?
We'll let Lisa answer that.
Well, hypothetically, it could, but as we get more into the budget process, there's a timeline for setting up the notice for the public hearing and all of those steps that need to be taken. So I think we've gotten into the practice of just pushing it up or closer in the budget calendar to allow, because as we're more deeply engrossed in the budget, there are many, many meetings. So this just assures that we have it passed and on the calendar if needed, so that we can still meet the deadline for passing the budget on time.
I've struggled with this. I supported it in committee to bring it forward, supported the public hearing, supported having the goal for the budget process. And I, at the time, stated some of the concerns that Randy stated much more succinctly than I did that night. But I am getting a lot of feedback from constituents about the whole range of economic issues and taxes and assessments and so on. I think it's a bad message to send right now, given what people are going through. I just cannot support this tonight. Not that circumstances don't change between now and the end of the budget process. And, it may be that the county's got some severe fiscal constraints come October that would cause us to relook at it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Henry Grandison?
Yes. I firmly believe, as I stated after the finance meeting, that, I am not for raising taxes this year, but I also believe, like Rich, we need the flexibility. So I'm supporting it, but only with that, reaction.
Thank you, Henry. Anyone else like to speak? Dan Klein?
Yeah, I'll just throw my 2 cents is that I think of this as an insurance policy. You don't buy insurance with the intention of having to use it, but it's there if you need it. And that's why I'm comfortable voting for this. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Greg Mezzi?
I definitely struggle with this one, as I've probably expressed to many of you in different forum or for whatever, in different places. I've expressed this. I don't think that the insurance policy should necessarily be on the backs right now of the taxpayer. So I understand we have other mechanisms in place for insurance policy. So I hear the different arguments because I also don't want to raise taxes, much like Henry, and I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth, but I do understand the desire to have the flexibility. I just think we really need to look and say, between now and October, do we not have the insurance we need in place? Like, do we really need to go up past what the cap is? And I don't know if we've had that conversation enough, because a lot of this has been, this is just what we do. This is just how it's done. This just goes through. We just sort of pass this for a process sake, so we have the option to if we need it. I don't necessarily think we should ever exercise. I don't think in this moment we should necessarily be exercising that option. So I struggle with this one, but I appreciate everyone's comments, because I do think that there is a real issue, and I think people are really feeling it. And I think we have to take this very seriously, as I know all of my colleagues around this table do take this very seriously. So yeah, I don't know where I sit just yet, but I'm sitting here and gonna have to make a decision here shortly. So I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Greg. Deborah Dawson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate my colleagues' concern for their constituents. We're all having a hard time. I mean, I'm pretty much on a fixed income. And yeah, the food prices are killing us. The gas prices, thank God I've got a hybrid. But I ask you all to remember that the county is kind of in the same position as a taxpayer, in that we have to pay for gas for our vehicles. We have to meet the salary demands and needs of our employees. We have to continue to provide certain services. Like 2/3 of our budget goes for state mandated services that we have to provide. State demands that we provide them, no matter how much they cost us to provide. So we're kind of in the same boat as the taxpayer. And my feeling is the insurance policy analysis is a good one. I don't want to raise taxes. I know people are hurting, but my first obligation is to the county being able to provide the services that it's mandated to provide, and all the extra services let's face it, our residents take for granted that we're going to provide. So that's why I support this, not just because we always do it, but because the county needs to have the flexibility. Lisa and staff need to know that they have flexibility if something goes way south between now and September. And God knows if we haven't learned anything from the last 2 years, we should know that things can go way south, turning on a dime. So I fully support this, and I will be voting for it, and I hope y'all will too.
Thank you, Deb. Travis Brooks.
When we come up short, if on budgets and department heads are starting to look to make cuts because they don't have the room to increase the budget. If everything is going up just like it is for taxpayers, the budgets start to shift, and typically it comes on the backs of employees, and departments are already strapped so thin. They don't have like this extra money just sitting around for them to reduce. What they end up doing is reducing employees, or reducing hours, or furloughing people. So, I mean, I've been through it for 23 years with the city. Our budgets are so strapped for everything else but staffing. There's no contracts, there's no program supplies, there's no extra stuff, there's no fluff. It's staffing. And so anytime we have to reduce budgets because we have to make our budget meet a certain number, it comes on the back of hardworking people, and they end up losing jobs. And we're in a position where it's so hard to get new employees. to come to the county, to come to the city, to come anywhere right now. And we start to lose employees. You know, that causes problems for our constituents too, whether it's services, whether it's the people that work for the county. It does cause problems across the board. So without question, I'm going to support this. I hope we're able to figure out everything without raising taxes. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to be part of that, but I want to make sure we can still deliver the services to our constituents, because when we don't, we look bad anyways. And I want to make sure hardworking people of the county aren't losing their jobs over this. So I'll be in full support.
Thank you, Travis. I really appreciate your perspective. Having the city outlook and knowing that you've worked in government before, as has Lee Shirtliff, really adds a lot to our conversation and gives us some perspective. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's go ahead and vote on this resolution.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
No.
Mike Sigler,
No.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
No.
Amanda Champion, Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grannison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
We have 11 ayes, 3 noes.
Thank you all. Anything else, Deborah?
No, I have an individual member filed, but I'll wait my turn.
Okay. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Henry Grannison, Chair.
Yes, we met a couple of weeks ago. We had a vibrant conversation about communications with Dominic. It really was about the proclamations and how we can get out more, how we can spread the word better about proclamations, because we pass them, but do they get sent to the employees? Do they get sent out to other people? And so we had a good conversation. We came with a number of ideas and we'll follow through with those. We also discussed digital signage, which, you know, TV screens in various places that we can do messages, but that's an issue further down the road. And then we also passed the Juneteenth proclamation, which is read here tonight. We also worked on the Pride proclamation too, that was read here tonight. For Juneteenth, we will the county will actually be officially honoring it on June 20th as opposed to June 19th because of the Sunday. But there'll be a presentation as I run through the Juneteenth activities. There'll be a presentation on June 13th by Harvard professor, Dr. Annette Gordon-Reed, who wrote the book on Juneteenth. It'll be Monday, June 13th at 4:15, and we hope everybody can attend. It will be virtual. Then on June 15th, the group Block, which is the Black ownerships, Black corporations, Black-owned businesses will host an expo at the Tompkins County Center for History and Culture, and food will be available for purchase. That will be 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Then on June 17th, I believe, there'll be a video walking tour in connection with African Americans that was done by the Juneteenth Working Group, which I thank for all their work on these activities. Also, there was a mention by George that Southside will be having activities. They'll be hosting a luncheon on Thursday. There'll be a panel discussion on Friday. They'll be hosting a large Juneteenth festival on Saturday. And then there'll be a health fair on Sunday at the Commons, at the Bernie Milton Pavilion. And also I should mention that again, Luca put in the DAI Pride Week in the chat, and that will also be held the week of starting June 26th through July 3rd, I believe.
Great, thank you, Henry. Any questions for Henry? Ann Corman?
Thank you. Is there a place, Henry, maybe I just haven't seen it, or an email that just puts all of those together, all those events?
Yes, there is a flyer for our events that has been going around. Dominic has it and will be sending it out to people. And I know that Carmen has been sending it out to people on email. I will get you an email, but I thought that emails were sent out to lots of people.
Okay, so that was sent out in an email to everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
And the link will be in the highlights as well to that message and flyer.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Henry? Okay, I see none. Thanks, Henry.
Thank you.
Next is Public Safety Committee, Rich John Chair.
Thank you, Shauna. The Public Safety Committee met on May 19th, and we had a pretty wide-ranging discussion. I did want to just mention that at the meeting, we recognized some county employees. Deputy Sheriff James Rolfe was at the airport when somebody had a cardiac incident, and he responded and used an AED device and saved the person's life. And we had a good discussion about that. And at our jail, there was a really unfortunate incident where a female inmate attempted to hang herself, and corrections officers Alpert, Haney, DeJesus, Schlee, and Butcher responded and saved her life. So some very good outcomes in those two instances because of the good work of our people. We talked about the resolutions that we considered this evening. We also had a discussion about fentanyl in our community and the real crisis that's going on right now with fentanyl tainted drugs, and making sure that we have Narcan available where we need to do it. And we're still sort of struggling with how to make it available at the places where it could be most effective, and what we might be able to do when we become aware of a batch of drugs that have come into the community that are laced with fentanyl and are dangerous. One of the things I learned was that it actually is more complicated than just getting the word out, because some individuals will seek out the more dangerous drugs to use them. So more to come there, but the bulk of our discussion involved mental health in the jail and what we might be doing in terms of trying to respond in a more comprehensive way. And we talked about it in the context of one of our Public Safety Committee goals, which is trying to figure out the functionality we want to have at our jail. And one idea that we're exploring is to try to increase the mental health capabilities there, and perhaps do it in concert with other mental health capabilities that we'd like to develop elsewhere in the county, to make sure that we're meeting needs and avoiding situations like this inmate that tried to commit suicide. At any rate, it was a very good meeting. We're going to continue the discussion at our meeting on June 16th. And I just mentioned our jail numbers are at 39 with 4 board outs. And finally, once again, if you have not signed up for Siren, please take the time, don't procrastinate, sign up for the notices. You know, it's a really good system to alert you to problems going on in the community and make you aware and able to react. So that's my report.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions for Rich? Okay, I see none. Next is Health and Human Services Committee, Dan Klein, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next Health and Human Services Committee meeting will be Wednesday, June 15th at 3 o'clock. And this might be the first test of our new virtual meeting policy. That might be the first day that it's in effect. Just so you know, this meeting has been rescheduled from our normal meeting time and date of June 20th because of the Juneteenth holiday. At this meeting, we will have a presentation about suicide prevention services in Tompkins County. So we will be having a presentation by Suicide Prevention and Crisis Service of Tompkins County, the organization, and also by the Mental Health Association in Tompkins County. That's my report.
Great, thanks, Dan. Any questions for Dan? Veronica?
Sorry, I might have misheard. What time is the meeting on June 15th?
I said it incorrectly. It's 1 o'clock. Thank you, Veronica.
Thanks.
Hey, any other questions, Rich, John?
Dan, I think that's a great timing on the suicide prevention because of the 988 number coming into play. I think July 16th is going to go into effect, that there will be a national number. And I also forgot to mention it on my report, but Dan and I have been talking about holding a joint Health and Human Services meeting and Public Safety Committee meeting I think it's July 18th at 3 o'clock. Is that the correct date, Dan?
I think so.
And what is that meeting going to be on?
We're developing an agenda, but we're trying to look at the sort of commonality on mental health issues, on response to drug overdoses, and there were a couple other issues I can't remember that we were considering putting on the agenda.
Any questions for Dan Klein? Nope. Okay, thank you, Dan. We do have one individual member filed resolution, Resolution J, or actually, Deb Dawson, this is yours.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to move Resolution J, authorization for public hearing, Tompkins Cortland Community College operating budget 2022-2023, ID 100956. And the reason that we've had to proceed in this way is because apparently TC3 needs to be in a position to send its budget approved by the counties up to Albany in July. Now, we are not having.
You know what? Let's get a second real quick.
Okay.
Seconded by Mike Lane.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yep.
We are not having a meeting in early July. That's our vacation date. So we needed to schedule this so that it could be considered in June. And we're going to have to pass this now in order to get it on the schedule for the public hearing at our next meeting. Meanwhile, in the interim, BCP will be reviewing and adopting TC3's budget and recommending it to all of us so that we can consider it at the same meeting with the public hearing.
Any questions or comments? I see none. Let's vote.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes,
14 ayes, 0 nos.
thank you. And last but not least, we have minutes of our previous meeting, May 17th, 2022. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Randy Brown, seconded by Amanda Champion. Any questions or comments? I see none. Let's do a roll call vote.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 nos.
Hey, there is no unfinished business.
I just have one reminder.
There is one unfinished business. I have two things.
Sorry.
Deborah Dawson.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that we have the privilege of having the staff from Senators Gillibrand and Schumer's office available to us tomorrow from 11 to 12. Kathy sent out a Zoom link earlier today, or you can attend here. Bring your A game, bring your questions. Just understand that these are not questions about politics in the election. These are questions about federal policy and grant programs and stuff like that. So I hope as many of you as possible will be there.
Thank you, Deb. Mike Lane.
Yeah, I was just wondering about with the change moving more toward having more people in chambers for our meetings. Can we get back to not having a roll call vote on every issue? I know Jonathan suggested that originally when we were all on the screen up there. But I think if there are one or two people on the screen, if we have a vote by hand for a lot of our motions, it would speed us up and we could see their hands. That's my suggestion.
We'll have Bill and Kathy look into that and write us an email over the next week or so.
Sure.
Thank you. And a mover to adjourn? Everyone? Second? Everyone, we're adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.